Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. It's great to be back with you for another episode of our show today. Today's show is titled 2016. It's going to be a riot. This is episode 112 of On the Move. By the way, if you're just joining the program for the first time, I want to first say thank you for tuning in. Secondly, this is the show that attempts to inspire people to stand up for their rights. We talk about all sorts of things: guns, government, philosophy. I'm a libertarian myself, so I happen to believe in small government. I'm typically a minarchist. I think that we should use the minimal amount of government necessary because government in and of itself is coercive, and it's a destructive force that we need to keep under our control. So, with that said, let's go ahead and cut into today's featured topics. I'll explain what we're going to be talking about today. I want to take a step back. I want us to actually take a step back and look from above at the whole concept of government. And what are we fighting for? What are we fighting against? Then I want to actually look and analyze what we are seeing today in America. We are living in an American powder keg. And I want to explain why this could erupt into riots in 2016. Then I also want to move into the left, how they are attempting to silence free speech. This is in reference to Donald Trump rallies and what they are doing. But then I also want to talk about the violence at Donald Trump rallies and ask, is he responsible? Is he responsible for the attacks, the physical violence on protesters, the roughing up of reporters at his events? Is he responsible for this? And then let's actually dive into a topic that I think is kind of important because of all the rhetoric and conversation that has been had about fascism recently, as well as nationalism. And I actually want to talk about what is fascism, what is nationalism. And we got a whole lot of other stuff, lots of other articles. Also, my good friend Dan Sandini, he's going to be joining us at 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 6:05 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. He's going to be joining us at the beginning of what would normally be our second hour, but we started a half hour late today. So he's going to be joining us at the top of the hour. So anyway, I'm really excited about that. He and I, we have a disagreement, which one thing I love about Dan, all right, is that we can disagree about things and not get angry at each other. We can have logical, rational conversations about things we disagree with. And this is one thing that I love, though, is that, when we disagree, we can actually hash it out. And, we may not agree in the end, but we're both open to the arguments. We're not completely just shutting out the conversation from the other guy. So we're going to talk about Donald Trump. He actually likes Donald Trump. I personally do not. So we're going to have a conversation, and we haven't really staged any of this stuff. We've had some minimal conversations off the air about this, but most of this is going to be for the first time, and I'm really excited to have this conversation because, number one, I'm having trouble finding Donald Trump supporters that are, and no offense to Donald Trump supporters out there, that are knowledgeable. There are some of you out there, but some of you are not. Now, this is no disrespect or anything, but I want to have an informed conversation with somebody who's willing to defend Donald Trump and actually knows why they like Donald Trump. And that's one of the reasons why I'm bringing Dan on, because I respect him. I respect his opinion. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's a liberty-minded guy. And I want to hear from a Donald Trump supporter whose opinion I respect, why they're going to vote for him and why they would encourage others to do the same. So we're gonna disagree, and that's all part of it. That's part of the process here. And this is why I do this show, is I want to have conversations with you guys. I want to push you guys, and I want you to push back. I want you to challenge my beliefs, make me have to think harder on a particular issue that maybe I haven't thought about. So that is what we all gain from engaging in the conversation, rather than just screaming each other down, because we don't learn anything in that process. So anyway, that will be a little later in the show. Before we cut to a commercial break, I just want to cover something that I find is kind of interesting, and I've been saying this is what was going to happen. So, I'm not going to say I told you so, but maybe I did. Merkel, and she's in charge of Germany. All right, I've been saying what's going on with all the immigrants coming in there, the refugees, or as some people are calling them, the refugees. They're destroying this country. And so many people inside of Germany overnight, the dynamic of the country, the atmosphere of the country has completely changed. People have to worry about, especially women, going out in public and getting raped by a bunch of refugees. The men are getting assaulted by refugees, and these are people who literally welcomed people into their country who they felt needed help. So it's kind of concerning when you go out of the kindness of your heart, you let somebody into your home and they start molesting your wife. These are the things that are happening in Germany. And I've been saying for a long time that the German people are going to be upset over this, and very well they are. So on a Breitbart.com articles titled "Merkel Drubbed at Ballot Box as Surging Nationalists Declare People Voted Against Her Migrant Policy." The article was written by Breitbart London on 13 March 2016. It says, German Chancellor Angela Merkel's party suffered a major setback in key state polls Sunday over her liberal refugee policy, while the right-wing populist AfD recorded a surge as it scooped up supporters from angry voters. Merkel's Christian Democratic Union lost in 2 of the 3 states in regional elections and scored a historic low in its stronghold Baden, I can't say that word, Württemberg, I don't know, I don't speak German, sorry guys, where it came in second place after the Greens, according to projections based on early results published by public broadcasters ARD and ZDF. The populist alternative for Germany, AfD, which had sparked outrage by suggesting police may have to shoot at migrants to stop them entering the country, recorded double-digit support in the first elections that they have stood for in all 3 regions. So this is important to note. This is why we saw Merkel backpedal when she had this open border policy. Yeah, everybody, come on in. You're welcome aboard. Come on into Germany. Open borders. Woohoo! But in the end, she realized, okay, well, some of these guys are going to have to leave, because she saw how upset the German people were getting. Now we're seeing proof in the pudding, so to speak. Did somebody say pudding? Bernie, calm down, relax. Go have a prune juice or something. Oh, but I really want some pudding. Look, so the point here is that people are pissed. People are pissed at what Germany has done to their country, and they are fighting back essentially here. They're getting angry and they're voting angry. And typically, by the way, I think this is not going to end well in Germany. The pendulum. We talk about the pendulum swinging. How it'll go to the left and to the right, and one of the things that'll happen is we overcompensate. So when people are sick of leftist policies, they overcompensate, and that pendulum swings just as far, if not further, to the right. And one thing that's important to note is that we already know that Europe has seen things like fascism. In fact, Germany has seen things like fascism. So it's kind of concerning when you see a big swing of angry voters swinging right, and who knows how much further right they'll swing. Again, fascism is a form of socialism from the right. It can't, technically Marxism. It cannot exist without Marxism. And we're going to cover all of this to explain what fascism really is in this episode. And I'm concerned that we're seeing a rise of fascism again in Europe. And it's thanks to these leftist policies, these open border policies, and people are angry, and rightly so. But I warn people now, do not vote angry. Do not vote simply out of anger. We have to be better than what we're fighting. And if what we're fighting is complete tyranny, then it doesn't make sense for us to support the same kind of mechanisms or policy structures that we're fighting in and of itself. What's the point of all of this if we're just going to back somebody who's going to be a strong man and make sure that the other guy pays? Because who knows? Again, if you create a situation where someone else is essentially a secondary citizen or is the person that we can victimize, and it's okay because, hey, it's not us, that structure, that power to victimize somebody, it's still there. It still exists. And who knows, at some point, if it could ever be used against us, it maybe not even by the guy that we like or the person that we like, but if it could, at some point down the road, the power structure changes hands, somebody else gets elected. Who's to say that the next guy in office is going to be as resistant to use these power structures against us as the person that we elected in the first place? Again, this power exists. That's a threat. It doesn't matter if it's being used against us or not. The fact that it could be is what we should be concerned about. So anyway, we're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, I want to dive into this election here, and we're going to talk about the overhead view. I actually want to get into, first of all, the feature topics, get into an overhead view of government and what we're actually fighting for and against. So you guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hey gang, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us through the break. Just want to give you guys a heads up here. We have the Bear Arms limited edition t-shirts, hoodies, phone cases, and coffee mugs available for you for a limited time offer. This campaign is only lasting for another 1 day and 4 hours from now. So if you would like to get this Bear Arms limited edition t-shirt, you can go to Teechip, that's TEECHIP.com, teechip.com/OnTheMoveShow. Again, that's teechip.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can get this original design. We made it for you guys. By the way, this was a design from my wife. She's a graphic designer. I really like this. It's a picture of a bear with the word arms across it, and it's available for t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, and phone cases. Really good price, really affordable. By the way, it's $20 for a t-shirt. I don't know if that's including shipping. I'm sure you probably have to pay for shipping. $15 for a coffee mug, $15 for phone cases, and $28 for hoodies. So, I tried to get something that would be affordable for you guys. And again, this is a limited time offer, only available for another day. So keep in mind, if you want to get it, You may want to act now because I'm not sure if we'll be bringing this thing back, this design. We're going to have other designs for you guys available. So again, that's teechip.com/onthemoveshow. And by the way, don't forget to check us out at our website, onthemoveshow.com. You can check us out here at Spreaker.com/onthemoveshow. Please follow us there. I would certainly appreciate it. You're helping us spread the message of liberty, because the more people that follow us on Spreaker, the more people that will find us in search results, which just means more people will listen to us. You are indeed helping spread the message of liberty and helping this program get bigger and better, and we certainly appreciate it. In addition, you can also follow us and like us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow, on Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can subscribe to us on youtube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And would really appreciate all that, gang. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right into the first feature topic. I would like to have a moment here where we just take a step back. We just pause for a second and think about what are we actually fighting for and what are we fighting against. And I think the best place to start here is government. Now, I'm not anti-government in that I'm an anarchist. I don't want anarchism where there is absolutely no government. Perhaps that could work somewhere down the line as we evolve as a society. I don't know. Typically, I'm more concerned about how government is beneficial at keeping us safe from other countries. But in the world that we live in, that is only so much of an issue, especially when we look at how many wars that we fought that were not necessarily wars that anyone here in America was actually being threatened, or at least being threatened more than what a war causes. Because again, if you look at what happened with, for example, Iraq and Afghanistan, okay, let's just assume that 9/11 was all of that. It was the terrorists' fault, and obviously it was. But let's just assume that everybody in Afghanistan and Iraq was responsible, and the wars that we fought were completely justified. Some of you may disagree with that, and I have my own issues with our involvement in both of those wars. However, let's just go ahead and assume that they were completely justified. Okay. Well, what happened? There were 3,000 Americans that died during 9/11, and we've seen way more than that die in Afghanistan. So what these people want to do is to draw us into a war of attrition, to make us spend money. This is what the purpose of these attacks were on 9/11, were to get us angry and to have us go into the graveyard for empires, which is the Middle East. It's a quagmire. They wanted. This is Osama bin Laden's plan to make us go into these countries, fight a guerrilla war that will last for decades, and eventually go bankrupt as a country, which he's managed to do. I mean, he actually managed to pull that off. We are trillions of dollars in debt now. The debt has exploded. The system cannot be sustained much longer. And ultimately, this plan that Osama bin Laden had may actually happen. It may actually be successful in the end, which is unfortunate. We fall right into the hands of the terrorists. We've done exactly what they've wanted us to do. They wanted us to go fight them like that. Fight them in a way that we can't possibly win, by the way. When you really think about it, we have all these rules of engagement. We don't fight wars like we used to, where literally, and I'm not advocating for this kind of policy, but I do think that if we are fighting a war, we should fight it to win. And I'm not advocating carpet bombing cities and things like that, but this is what we used to do. This is what everyone used to do until the world suddenly became more civilized. Look, this is not this idea that we're a civilized war. We fight civilized wars, and we are a civilized world. I think this is an illusion. If you look at by the way, Russia, they don't care about collateral damage. Look at what they're doing in Syria. They've had so many civilian casualties over there, and they don't care. But they are effective. What they're doing is winning. By the way, FYI, if you aren't aware, Russia has withdrawn from Syria, but they say they're not that far away, and they can come back at a moment's notice. They've left a lot of their equipment and things like that in the hands of Assad's regime, so they can just come back right over anytime they're needed. But essentially what we're looking at, from what I'm understanding now, is they're talking about a partition. They're going to attempt to partition Syria. This is going to wind up really bad, by the way. They want to, again, the United States government, they want this pipeline, this oil pipeline going from Saudi Arabia, and ultimately it's going to end up in Europe and supplying Europe with oil. But how they're going to do that, they want this partition, this side of Syria. They want that to go to the Kurds, maybe. That's a potential, or even to the Free Syrian Army, the Syrian rebels. Again, these are ISIS. This is ISIS underneath a different name. So they're talking about 3 to 4 different partitions. Number one, they give some to the Syrian army. They give some to Assad. They give some to the Kurds, possibly creating a Kurdistan, a real Kurdistan, because of the way the battle lines have been drawn. The map will be drawn this way. People aren't just going to give up territory. So they're going to be remapping the Middle East here, and the remaining portions that aren't going to be partitioned are going to end up in ISIS hands. It's going to be a real Islamic State. That is not going to end well. I can guarantee you that we're going to end up in Syria at some point within the next, I would say, maybe 1 or 2 years. We're going to see boots on American U.S. soldiers, boots on the ground in Syria within 1 or 2 years. Because of the situation that they're doing, carving this place up. Again, you also have to imagine, remember, Syria is a sovereign nation. We're not the world police. We're not the world court. We don't decide here in America. We don't decide who gets to keep their regime and who doesn't. That's not our job. Syria is a sovereign nation. They've invited Russia in. They did not invite the United States. So keep in mind, if we were having some civil unrest here in the country, and China came in and they were like, you know what, we're gonna fund one side of this, and we're gonna partition the country, and we're gonna do what we want. We're gonna start carving it up. Would you guys have any issue with this? I know I personally would. I would have a fundamental problem with another country invading our country without permission, without us asking, without the legitimate government asking for their help, for their involvement in the process. So, the situation in Syria is getting crazy. But back to the I kind of went off into the weeds there. What are we actually fighting for? What are we fighting against? This is the feature topic. So, the idea that we're a civilized world, I think that would all fall by the wayside when the first bombs between nation and nation warfare started again. If we actually go into a World War III scenario, which I am terrified about, I hope that never happens, but I just see it happening. The way that the tensions are building up and the situation with Syria, all of these things are pitting people against each other, pitting nations against each other, and Russia is not they're not good guys. There are no good guys in this, from what I can tell. I don't even think that the United States government is a good guy. Again, mostly what you have is governments against governments, and this is the problem. This is what we're fighting against. Governments, in and of itself, all they care about is power. Russia wants to overthrow U.S. hegemony. If you don't know what hegemony is essentially one government that's more powerful than all the other governments, and it holds them all down, keeps them at bay, can use threats of violence to coerce results. They can fight proxy wars by funding different armies. Basically, they try to shape a hegemonic power tries to shape the world how they want it. They try to control the world to keep stability or to keep the balance of power how they want it. That's what the United States government is right now. They're a hegemonic power. This is what we are. We are currently trying to reshape the Middle East how we see fit. This is, and the Russians, they hate this. They don't like that. They want to be the hegemonic power. They want to have that power, and so does China. So does every country out there. Honestly, if they could figure out a way to get it, but the ones that likely have a chance are Russia and China. They may be willing to topple the United States and share this hegemony. It's called something else. I think it's dual hegemony at that point. If you have multiple people or just two different countries who are sharing this power. But ultimately, once they get that power they wrestle it away from the United States, they may try to wrestle it away from whatever country they share power with. This is how governments work. All they care about is power and expanding that power. Even the United States government. What I see right now is a globalist trend, a trend where we're talking about actually, basically destroying the economy. The way that the economy is right now, it's completely unsustainable, as I've said before. We're talking about negative interest rates. We're talking about getting rid of dollar bills. They're actually talking about getting rid of the $100 bill because they say that it's used in criminal enterprises, and they want to get rid of it so that they can force them to go digital with their transactions. That way they can track it and stop crime. But no, this is an attempt here to digitize money. They wanted to go to a paperless money society that completely digital. That way the government can take your money. They have complete control of your money. If they say you can't get it out of the bank, you're screwed. They can do bail-ins with that money. All of this stuff. What I'm thinking is happening right now, and I alluded to at the end of the last episode, is that the U.S. government is setting us up for some kind of conflict, either with Russia or with somewhere in the Middle East, in Syria. There's talk about Yemen, Libya, all of these different places where, honestly, I believe that the U.S. government is responsible for the rise of ISIS. We've been funding, training, and arming ISIS, and one man's Free Syrian Army rebel is another man's ISIS fighter. I mean, they are one and the same. They continue to switch sides, switch teams, depending on what is most beneficial in the moment. So, I have an issue with this proxy warfare that we're doing, but the fact that our economic system is so decrepit at this point, the fact that it's hanging by a thread, and all that it will take is the rest of the world to decide that they don't want to spend money, they don't want to buy oil in U.S. dollars. That's all it will take for our economy to go, because then at that point trillions of U.S. dollars come flooding back into the U.S. economy, and we see hyperinflation. And the central banking cartel, they can't be the ones to be responsible for that. They can't be the ones to take the blame, because they need you to trust them to rebuild the new system. Whether or not it's in U.S. government hands, or suddenly it falls to a global government kind of thing that happened after a big world war where nuclear weapons were involved, and the global community got together and said, never again, we can't allow that kind of warfare to ever happen again. The only answer is to usurp all national sovereignty and create a national government to protect ourselves. And they'll do that probably through treaties like the North American Union, the European Union, all of these things. They'll carve it out into regional governments that take away all these nations' sovereignty, which is exactly what we saw with the European Union. They're going to do that again, and then they'll put a cap on top of that with a global government, climate change tax coming in, just like an income tax. The same people in the United States that have the control mechanisms, like the George Soroses of our government within our country, the elite power brokers, those guys are they don't care that America's gone. Those guys are still going to be in power in a new global government if that ever came to happen. These are the teams, these are the sides that we see right now developing. Again, I don't really think that anybody is on a team. There may be people that have the same goals or have some of the same goals, but this is a freaking free-for-all for power. That's what governments are, a free-for-all for power. And the beauty of our country is that our forefathers, our founders, they sought to restrict this power structure. They sought to actually put in mechanisms like a Bill of Rights to make sure that the government can exceed certain things. So this is what we're fighting against, is the power. That we need to make sure that governments don't get too much control, don't get too much power, because that is essentially the biggest threat that everyone has on the planet. Some people are losing this battle. Their governments are essentially benevolent dictatorships. And the last beacon of hope for humanity is the United States. You know, I mentioned in previous weeks that we don't do anything that's truly selfless. You know, everything that you do is selfish in some ways. The altruism is an ideal that you can never actually reach. What it does is it actually kills your drive to do anything, to have goals, to try to achieve things, because the goals you do have are unachievable. To be completely selfless is completely unachievable. So you eventually realize that, oh, I'm never going to be able to achieve this, and you feel bad about yourself, and you put yourself down because you can never reach this utopian ideal of being truly 100% selfless. But there is some things that we do that are completely selfless, and I didn't mention that last week. Let me actually talk about it. When we do things for our children, this is the one thing that all of us do completely selfless and almost by instinct. We do things for our children. Right now, we're fighting for liberty. We're fighting for the freedom from law. And this is one of the things that I am noticing a huge trend here. So many people don't understand what the word liberty means. And it does mean freedom from law. There shouldn't be a law that restricts your freedom of speech. There shouldn't be a law that restricts your freedom of religion. There shouldn't be a law that restricts your right to defend yourself. Because these are God-given rights or natural human rights, whatever they are. But freedom and liberty is liberty from law, freedom from law. There ought not be laws that restrict freedom. The lack of laws is freedom. Now, there are some laws that are good and just, like laws that restrict aggression from others. You know, laws that prevent people from hurting you or taking your things. Those laws are good because you don't have a right to steal other people's things. You don't have a right to hurt other people. There ought not be laws restricting your rights. But this is the definition that needs to be pounded in everyone's head, that liberty is freedom from law. That is what it is. And if we can make that clear, that ideal clear in America's head, I think we'll win a lot of battles if we can just make them understand that one point. But, you know, and again, we are the freest country in the world. Why are we? Because we have the least amount of laws restricting freedom. That's why. So what we do for our children is a selfless act. And one of those acts is to protect what we have here in America. To protect the freedom, to protect the liberty, so that the next generation can live free. What we do for our children is completely selfless in that act. We have to protect for them humanity's greatest achievement. I mentioned last week, throughout history, no other culture in the world has had the kind of revolution that we have. When revolutions happen, they typically go socialist, and the same exact power structure that the revolutionaries were fighting, those same revolutionaries end up setting up those same exact power structures. So they actually use the tools of tyranny that they hated in the first place, that they rebelled against in the first place. America was unique. America is the only country in the world that when we had a revolution, we did not establish those tools of tyranny. We actually created a Bill of Rights. And it's because the circumstances behind the revolution were completely different and unique among history, and that's why it wound up differently. So we need to protect this great human achievement, our greatest human achievement, for our children. We need to make sure that it's there for the next generation. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. We're going to talk Trump. This is going to be a good conversation. I can already tell. I love it when Dan's on. Anyway, we're going to cut to that break. While we're on a commercial break, go to daylightdisinfectant.com and check it out. Anyway, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, gang, we are back. We are joined now by Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. He's a good friend of mine. I respect the man's opinion quite a bit. Dan, are you there?
I am here, Mac. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. It's been a busy day. We got a lot on the menu here, and mostly what I want to focus on with you, Dan, is this disagreement that we have about Donald Trump. Correct me if I'm wrong. You support Donald Trump, right?
Oh, I have. If your listeners are Cruz fans, and I'm sure many of them are, do not despair, because in my lifetime, Mac, I am 53 years old, and I have yet to pick a winner. So, in all those elections. So, do not despair. But I did, last summer. I think he declared in June or something like that. And I picked him. I think I picked Gingrich in the last one or the one before that. And that just fizzled out. But I will say that I did make phone calls for both Mitt Romney and also for John McCain too. I made a lot of phone calls. I think I made over 1,000 phone calls for both those candidates. So in addition to doing my daylight disinfectant citizen journalism routine, I do call from home for the elections, for the national elections for president.
So, I actually voted for McCain and Romney, and one of my issues with voting for these guys is that I felt like I was compromising both times. And especially after the fact with McCain. McCain was one of the first the first times I started leaning Republican. So my first let me explain. My first diving into politics, I was a young kid, didn't know anything about politics at all, didn't follow anything. I had a lot of friends who, growing up, they were Democrats and they supported Democrat policy. So I thought, oh, okay, that must be the good thing to do. So then, I started finding out about what was going on with the Iraq War, and I didn't want us to be in Iraq because I knew how many civilian casualties were mounting underneath the Bush administration, and this bothered me. So that was a reason why I voted for John Kerry. I just did not want us to be in Iraq. I started thinking about after this time. After John Kerry lost, obviously. I started thinking about Iraq, and I was like, I don't think it's a good idea for us to leave Iraq now, because if we do, all these people who fought alongside us, we're abandoning them, and they're just going to be left there to be killed. I don't think that's an honorable thing to do. So I supported McCain because, as much as I disagreed with the war, I didn't think it would be a good idea for us to immediately bail out of there like Obama has done and create a power vacuum, which we now know ultimately led to ISIS. So I voted for McCain, but again, he was very lackluster. I felt like I even at that time in my life, I still didn't know a whole lot about politics, but I was learning, and I didn't like him on a whole lot of policies. But the one issue that I had was the war in Iraq. And then when I got to Romney, I felt like I had learned quite a bit more, and I still felt like he was a progressive. I did not like the fact that he was for Romney Care, which is, what's the difference between Obamacare and Romney Care, really, and that he's a progressive. progressive in and of itself as well, and establishment. And, now we can see that playing out. So one of the reasons why I think that both of the candidates I voted for, though, lost were because they were extremely lackluster candidates. They were not conservatives in the least. Both McCain and Romney are progressives, and I think this is why the Republican Party continues to lose the election, the general, because we keep putting up these lukewarm candidates that alienate the conservative base and make them want to stay home. And you just cannot win a Republican election if you don't have the conservatives at your back. What do you think about that, Dan?
Well, we're talking about Trump today and not about Romney, but I think it is good that we spend a little bit of time on Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, you're right, was a huge lib from the state of Massachusetts, which produced the template for Obamacare, as you know. But I think it's also important to note that in that election, the GOP produced an alternative to Obamacare, which he was going to go forward with if he became president of the United States. And I did take the time to read that thing, and it read very, very similar to Obamacare. It was basically the same thing, except the subsidies were slightly different. So they're tweaking with the subsidies, but the general essence of the thing. And you wouldn't expect much different, knowing that Romney invented the template for that. So, and the other thing I'll say about Romney is he came very close, and I think that what we're seeing now in Romney on the late night TV shows, if we had seen some of that or more of that in the elections, if he had done that when he was running, he would have won. Because there just is that part of what we can't gloss over is that this is not only an election for who's right, and the fact that constitutionalism and principles are what's right, but you also have to capture the hearts and minds of Americans. And a lot of the hearts and minds of Americans are that young, tender middle. You have to attract young voters. And Romney had the opportunity as a successful businessman, and he was a successful businessman. You can look at his tactics. He's a corporator, but these kinds of things, conglomerates, and those kinds of things go on all the time. But he was a very successful businessman, and there was a certain demographic of younger people that can be attracted to that sort of thing. The apprentice-type crowd that can be attracted to that sort of American success story of starting their own business. And so I think that he had a very good chance of doing it. He refused to double down and choked on Obama and confronting Candy Crowley at that last debate. And he knew he did it at the time. He knew he choked at the time. But now he wants another run at it. But I think that, in bringing it back to Trump now, I honestly believe that what he's doing is unconscionable. It may be right in his own mind, but it's really showed me how confused his own mind is. And in terms of the backlash,
what specifically are you talking about? Anchor this to a specific instance, if you don't.
Okay, Romney just making an address saying that Trump was not good for the party and that they have to do everything they can to defeat Trump. I think that's a mistake by Romney. It's a mistake from a number of perspectives. One is, if his real goal is to defeat Trump from that, I don't think it served his purpose, because I think you look at any of the polls, he got a bump from that, which shoved him over the top. He clobbered Rubio in Florida, and he came close to being Kasich, who's a real old hand up there in Ohio. He came very close to doing that. For the anti-Trumpsters, there's the one bit of good news is Kasich prevailing in a delegate-rich state of Ohio, right in the middle of the country. I mean, Trump, Trump's got a problem. That's it right there, and it's yet to see how that's going to be resolved. But I think that Mitt Romney, in coveting the endorsement of Donald Trump all along, I mean, there's no one who can say that doesn't look slightly hypocritical to come out and paint him as the Antichrist when he actually coveted the guy's endorsement for his own candidacy, right?
Yeah. Well, and I agree, but I think this is one of the problems I have with Donald Trump supporters. No offense, Dan, but anytime the Donald Trump supporters point back to something in history, I find it kind of hilarious because how is it okay to refer back to something Romney did at some point, and now he's doing the exact opposite, but it's not okay to point back to something Donald Trump has said or stood for, where he's changed his mind supposedly now, or even hasn't in cases of, like, for example, the wealth tax. He supported a 14.25% wealth tax, where he would take wealth out of people's bank accounts that have already been taxed and apply it towards the national debt. He said that he would still do this, but it just won't work now. So it's not the philosophy that he's changed his mind, that he disagrees with a wealth tax. It's the fact that it just won't work because the debt is too high now.
Well, I'm uneducated on his position on this wealth tax thing, but I can say, okay, so, I mean, what you're saying is that Romney has evolved since he coveted 4 years ago, Trump's endorsement. And he has changed as a person and realized what a terrible person Donald Trump is in the 4 years or 5 years or whatever it is since he coveted his endorsement. And it's really not fair to say, hey, my candidate, Trump, can evolve in terms of his positions, but Romney is not allowed to evolve in terms of his positions. Well, that may be a fair criticism, Mac. I just have not heard Romney articulate how things have changed since that endorsement. It'd be a real good question.
And that's a great question too. But I've also never heard Donald Trump articulate his pivot point either regarding all of these stances. Like, for example, his once support for an assault weapons ban and longer waiting periods for background checks on guns. I've never heard him. To this day, he's still adamantly in support of eminent domain. To this day, he still talks about how he's bribed politicians. You know, I've never heard him talk about what his pivot point was when he stopped donating to Democrat candidates to actually win the election and get Obamacare sorry, I'm trying to think of the word. To get the Obamacare passed, his donations led to like Democrats like Harry Reid, and by the way, Hillary Clinton getting reelected. And you know, I've never heard him mention his pivot point on these things. In addition to now he's pro-life, where before he was for partial birth abortions. His pivot point that he explained on that was that somebody that he knew had a child that they were considering aborting, and because the kid is a good kid, he's now pro-life. Like, if he was a bad kid, he would still be for partial birth abortions. Is that what you would get from that, Dan?
Well, I think that you're right, and Donald Trump with me does run aground when it comes to a very important issue to me, and that's abortion. I mean, for certain you have to say, you know, how aggressively is he going to pursue defunding the portions of Planned Parenthood that support women having abortions? I think that Trump has gone on the record now as saying that he is an advocate of defunding that portion of Planned Parenthood. That Planned Parenthood does some good services in terms of sexually transmitted disease testing for young people, education, and those kinds of things, and that those kinds of services from a private company may be in the interest of the public good, but that he cannot conscionably support public funding of abortions, which is what's happening right now. Which is that's kind of a fine line to say, especially when you have a Ted Cruz who's sitting out there saying, "Hey, I'm gonna pull the plug on Planned Parenthood." But I think the reason why he's doing these things, and the reason why he has supported these issues over the ages, is twofold. See, I think people are taking, and conservatives are taking, Donald Trump too literally at what his word is, and they are not reading between the lines well enough in terms of what his past behavior has been and what he's saying he's going to do right now and what he's actually going to do. Because if you look at Donald Trump, he has to get elected, okay? He somehow has to bring young people, Hispanics, progressive liberals who in some ways maybe in the squishy middle on the abortion issue. He has to bring people along. And his only way of doing that, Matt, is saying things with a plausible deniability and an ability to change on those issues, because he feels that he has to get elected before he can actually implement what he wants to get done. So, and I won't belabor the point, but in terms of campaign contributions to all of these people, like let's take Harry Reid, who ultra liberal. Harry Reid is the Antichrist, okay? And we're saying, okay, Donald Trump gave to Harry Reid. Donald Trump has done what Donald Trump has needed to do to get along in business, okay, and to open casinos and to be able to get leases and drinking licenses and all kinds of things. That's a game that has to be played in the real estate business. And I'm not a real estate investor. I'm a stock investor, a bond investor. I'm not a real estate investor. But if you're a guy like Donald Trump, you better know whose pockets to pad. And if you don't, you're not going to be a successful businessman. Well, I think that's a lot of what you've seen in old Donald Trump is going along to get along and learning. More importantly, Mac, learning as he's gone through that process from the inside of a machine. Okay, he knows how their PACs operate. He knows what the good old boy, good old girl system is inside of the Democrat Party. He knows how to covet people inside the Democrat Party because he's been a part of that party and has made friends, real friendships with a lot of those people, and that will buy you a lot more than positions. Democrats and liberals, okay, how do they vote and how do they act and how do they run on pure emotion, okay? Most conservatives don't run on emotion. They run on emotion towards the Constitution, okay? But a liberal Democrat doesn't run on facts. I can tell you that. They don't run on voting records. They run on the guy that they perceive as being a good businessman, gave good jobs to their friends, treated them fairly, acted as a good leader in a corporate world, and I think that's what they see in Donald Trump. So, Trump is past, unfortunately, we don't have a voting record for Donald Trump. And you are either, this is my opinion on him, is you're either going to get something that's really bad, which I think is what you're anticipating, Mac, is that, geez, every time the guy has had a bad position on a particular issue, those are the kinds of things that he's going to promote and put forward with full aggression right away as soon as he gets in. Or you're going to get somebody who has been watching that system and is going to do precisely the things that he is saying he's going to do right now, which is, A, he's going to control that border in the southern United States. We have a border in southern United States, Matt Corley, okay, where James O'Keefe can put on Osama bin Laden mask and a bathrobe and wander across the Rio Grande back and forth a couple of times. Multiple takes, okay? No one ever stopped him, no one ever said it. Where James O'Keefe can go to Canada, buy a speedboat, put a big bag of ricin, all right, labeled ricin, okay, in the front of the boat, dressed as a terrorist, have them pull up to the docks on the other side of the Great Lakes and walk into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with a bag of ricin. I mean, this is the country that we're living in right now. And sooner or later, Mac, unless we control those borders, we are going to get nuked. And I think that I'm just using that as one example of something that Donald Trump is going to do once he gets in office. I'm not campaigning for the guy. I'm just telling you what is going to happen. Okay, when he gets elected, they are going to control those borders. I can tell you right now, we will know who's inside the country.
All right, hold on one second. You've already covered a lot. I want to comment and actually ask you on some of these things here, and then we'll get into what Donald Trump is actually saying he's going to do. But one of the things that you just said that I think counteracts what you're saying now. You say that you trust him as word when he's saying he's going to do certain things, but just a second ago you're saying that he's not saying exactly what he means. So he's just saying what he needs to get elected. This is what you just said. And we don't have a voting record, you're right, but we do have a record decades long of the things he said, and I agree with you. This guy is not saying what he actually believes. I believe that he is a progressive. I believe he's saying things very vague to rile up the uninformed voters, just like the Democrats do, taking people for emotional causes. Like the Democrats will say, we need to do it for the children. Donald Trump says we need to do it because we have a country. And he's getting people that are angry, and the pendulum is swinging very violently from the left to the right. And I agree that Donald Trump, like Ben Carson said, is different. He's different than what he's saying he is. There are two Donald Trumps. Here's Ben Carson talking about that.
First of all, I've come to know Donald Trump over the last few years, he is actually a very intelligent man who cares deeply about America. There are two different Donald Trumps. There's the one you see on the stage, and there's the one who's very cerebral, sits there and considers things very carefully. You can have a very good conversation with him.
So there are two different Donald Trumps, and even his endorsers are saying that these are the things that I'm concerned about, that he's not being honest of what he actually believes. Number one, I think that he is, like I said, a progressive. All of his policy positions are progressive, and even you said you'd never heard about his position on the wealth tax. Well, here's a clip from that. He's talking about how he would support a wealth tax. This is an interview from I think it was 2015, talking about his position on a wealth tax a few years back. But he's actually talking about how he really hasn't changed the idea for the position. It just won't work now. Here's a clip.
There's another issue that you proposed in 2000, talking about trying to...
Okay, this interview was from August 2015, so it's not like this is way in the Wayback Machine too far, but he's talking about the position in 2000.
Talking about trying to address and tackle the national debt, which was lower then than it is now, much higher now. You proposed a one-time 14.25% tax on the rich, people who have more than $10 million to pay off the debt. Do you still support that?
Now we can't do that because the debt is so big. That would have knocked out the debt. What I would have paid it, I'll tell you this.
Okay, but it still would take a huge chunk out of it.
It would have taken 14%, and we have no debt. I'd do that all day long. I would.
So he's not actually against that policy. He's just against it now because it won't work. What do you think about that, Dan?
Well, I think it's unconscionable. I think, having been well off myself, I'd be curious to go back and see, did he say in that where he drew the line in terms of, because I'll bet you that's what Trump is doing. He's trying to figure out, okay, do I do it to people with $1 billion or more? Okay, people with $1 billion or more dollars.
It's $10 million. That's what he said.
$10 million?
Those over $10 million, 14.25%. But again, you have to remember, these people have already paid taxes. Now the government is double dipping.
Oh my God! Okay, you're going to go there. I mean, it's triple dipping, right?
Yeah.
You pay a county tax on top of a state tax on top of a federal tax. Okay, plus Social Security and Medicare on what you're paying.
So the issue, the issue here ultimately, it's not. This is an ideological issue that we have to understand how Donald Trump is thinking. Donald Trump is not saying, as you and I, Dan, would say, the reason why we have. I'm guessing. Actually, let's backpedal here before we get into Donald Trump. This analysis, Dan, do you think that we have a spending problem or we have a income problem as far as taxes? Our government isn't taxing us enough. What do you think? Are we spending too much, or are we just not? What was that?
I mean, you need smaller government, of course.
So this
is roll taxes back.
This is the difference here. Donald Trump doesn't think that the government is spending too much money. No. Donald Trump says we're just not being taxed enough. That's the answer. Just to tax us more money.
I mean, you'd have to roll that forward in 2016. Okay, we're months later. He's talking also in that particular interview. He's talking about a wealth tax. Okay, and he's obviously uneducated about that particular issue, because my personal belief is I think that any kinds of means, what you're talking there is means testing, and you get into constitutional issues on whether you can actually attack people for what their net worth is. Right now, the government has no way of knowing what you're worth unless you report it yourself. Okay?
You're very
talking about your income.
Your very point that he's uneducated on this issue is concerning enough that he's having policy positions that, and I'm not even talking about does the government have a right to take your money, which I don't think is moral. I object to the moral supposition that they can just take the money out of your bank account that you already have, but more importantly, I'm concerned about the fact that he thinks that it's not. We don't have a problem with how much money our government is spending. The spending he's completely cool with, apparently, and he's not talking about cutting spending. He's talking about increasing taxes. In addition to the increasing taxes he has with tariffs, he says he's free market, but he's just for some control mechanisms on it. That is not free market. Control mechanisms are the antithesis of free. So he's talking about increasing taxes up to 45% with this tariffs that he's talking about. All of these plans that Donald Trump talks about how he's going to make America great again is to increase taxes. He's not talking about shrinking the size of government. He's talking about still continuing to do the same things, use the same control mechanisms, and increase them, make the government bigger, and make the burden on the tax people even more severe, make us have to pay even more taxes. Imagine paying 45% from everything that you buy from Walmart. There are people who can barely afford to get their stuff from Walmart. And all of these extra taxes, this isn't affecting Donald Trump with his Italian suits. Donald Trump is still going to pay the same exact amount because his stuff doesn't come from China. Although his products that he makes come from China, Mexico, things like that. He has no problem bashing companies that move overseas, but he's doing the same thing. He talks about boycotting Apple and boycotting Nabisco for moving and Ford, but his products himself comes from overseas, in addition to the fact that he's the only candidate that has been who's been in trouble for hiring illegal immigrants, Dan. This is what I'm saying. The guy has no scruples as far as conservative principles. He is a progressive. He's saying what he has to say to get elected, and he's the kind of guy. Even if you look at him from a best case scenario, he's just uninformed. He's still learning. Maybe he's an honest guy. What he's saying, he's actually a common sense conservative, which is how he's describing himself. Even if you believe that at face value, why, Dan, are you, as an educated, informed guy whose opinion I highly respect, why are you putting your faith and your energy behind a candidate that is just now coming pretty late to the ball game? If you believe everything at face value, which I don't, but if you believe that he is actually a conservative now, why are you putting your effort behind a guy who's still learning, in a best case scenario, still learning, still trying to figure out where he stands on policies? I want a guy who's been fire tested, who knows where he stands and has had these viewpoints at least for a few years, let alone like all of his life, like Ted Cruz, for example. What do you think, Dan?
Well, I mean, why 2 years? I mean, how fast can people evolve, and how fast can people change their opinions, and to what extent is what they really say publicly represent how they feel internally? I guess that's a question you have to ask yourself. And you have to ask yourself the question, there is no perfect candidate, okay? So what are my alternatives, okay? I have to look at what my alternatives were. And I have to look at Ted Cruz, and to be quite honest with you, we haven't gotten any, and Mac, you know, no one worked harder to bring in the Tea Party Republicans. Nobody did. But honestly, I have not been real happy with what I've gotten.
What have you seen from Cruz that you don't like? Specifically, because this is one of the things I have conversations with Trump supporters all the time. They call him Lion Ted Cruz. They have issues with him. They say things like he's a globalist. His wife's part of the Council on Foreign Relations. We've discussed all of this on this show, and I've been able to find answers satisfactory to me that I feel still warrant. I'm not necessarily a supporter. I don't call Ted Cruz my guy as far as, I'm not endorsing him or anything along those lines, but he's the only Republican in this race that I could even imagine voting for. It come the general. He's the only guy. And
that's interesting. Because when this all started, I could have gone for any of these people. Honestly, I don't care. I really don't. I really would have gone for any of these people to begin with. And for me, it was kind of a Cruz-Trump thing, close, if you can believe that or not.
So what are your deal breakers then, Dan? What issues are so important to you? If you have any, that if somebody has an opposite or varying position than you on this issue, that you simply will not vote for them? Is there any issue like that?
Well, see, here's the thing. Well, you have to be a little bit careful there. There are two paths. I believe what Andrew Breitbart said. There are two paths that are going on in this country right now. Okay, there is the path of America, and there's the path that was represented by Occupy, which we took down, which have not gone away, by the way. These are the same people that are standing the road, blocking people from going to the Trump rally. Okay, now you could say, and that's an interesting place to go. You can say you disagree with everything about Donald Trump. He turns you off as a leader. He has the wrong positions on taxes. He wants to increase taxes. He has violated all of our immigration laws in terms of his hiring practices. But I think even you, Mac, would say, I stand for the First Amendment and for the right of people to speak and for people to go and listen to them and not to illegally interfere with commerce block a roadway and keep people from getting there, okay, and get in their faces and be violent, okay, inside of a private event and those kinds of things, I think you can say that those kinds of tactics are something that you decry.
So hold on one second. So your biggest issue is the First Amendment, your right to speak, right?
Well, that would be one issue,
okay.
For sure.
All right, well, before we move on here, Donald Trump wants to open up libel laws so he can sue the press for stories that are intentionally negative. This is the wording that he's using. Intentionally negative, meaning not false, but just intentionally negative, something that you say against him. He wants to be able to sue you for using your First Amendment rights, your freedom of speech. These are the issues. Again, I support not just freedom of speech, not just the Second Amendment. I'm not a one or two cause guy. I'm a Constitution guy. I'm a natural rights guy, and I cannot. And I will not put my name down next to a candidate that does not support the Constitution. I'm not going to stand behind them if they're supporting policies that I feel violate the Constitution. I'm just not. I'll vote for a Libertarian. I'll abstain from voting if I can't do that. It's not going to end well by. And again, why are we backing a candidate? But this whole thing, we're supposed to be fighting for liberty. And I mentioned earlier, liberty is the freedom from laws or from threats as well. And what Donald Trump is talking about is continuing to expand the federal Leviathan and get it to the point where they can attack you, they can sue you for talking negatively about Donald Trump. How do you round that, man?
Well, I think you have to look at that very carefully on what he's saying. Okay, what he's saying, and you and I both know that as public figures, people can say bad things about us. And to be quite honest, I don't know how many bad things have been said about you, but I can tell you, I've been called every name in the book. I've had tinfoil hats put on me. Yeah. I haven't, everything. And my attorney, Bruce McCain, has told me multiple times, they have to make something up about you. And those aren't federal laws, Mac. Those laws go through county laws, through state laws, and through years and years of common law. For Donald Trump to change those things as a nation, okay, for what the bar is for libel and slander, it's near to next to impossible to change that. So why is he saying it, okay? Why is he saying it? Number one, he's probably uneducated and hurt because somebody put a tinfoil hat on him. Although it happens all the time, I'm sure. He's still hurt by it, and he still likes to threaten about it, okay? But number two is he has no intention on doing it and will be unsuccessful if he even tried to. You have to read between the lines on what's happening, man. He's not really going to go out there and try and change the libel and slander laws. He's just not going to be able to do it, even if he does. But so he's going to be smart enough to say, hey, you know what, I was smart enough when I made those statements, okay? And I really haven't looked closely at what he's going to say, but it's a joke, Mac.
Dan,
you can't change state laws, President of the United States. You just can't do it.
The federal government can encroach into your life in so many different ways, and we've already seen how the federal government has used the Interstate Commerce Clause to regulate things that are not interstate and not commerce. So this is just one thing. You say it can't be done, okay? Maybe it can't, but it doesn't mean that he may not try. And even if he doesn't, this is going back to him just saying things that he doesn't mean. You said that you think maybe he's uneducated and just hurt. Why are you voting for this guy? If I personally am not going to vote for a candidate that is reactionary. I don't want a candidate that is uneducated. Maybe they've just recently become educated about certain issues, but they don't have an understanding of how the broader context falls into place. And I don't want a candidate that gets butthurt about what people say. You and I both have had so much flack leveled at us because of our viewpoints. And the idea that we would turn around and say, I want to silence you and threaten to sue you because you've said something that really hurt my feelings, that's ridiculous. When I first started, I felt that way. I'm going to sue that person. You learn fairly quickly that's once you begin to take up the mantle that we have taken up, that's part of what you carry with you is, you need to grow some thick skin because you're now a public figure. It's the price that you pay.
It's the price you pay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop me from feeling butthurt about it.
Yeah.
I will say that when I see things, when I see people accusing me and Andrew Breitbart of being homosexuals together, okay, when I see doctored up pictures of me and Andrew doing stuff like that, I mean, it's just nonsense, okay? It's not true. But the number of people who look at that say, oh, yeah, that's probably true. And so in any case, but I guess my point is, Mac, you said, how can I support this person? You have to look at what we have right now for a country. And I don't think any of your listeners would disagree with me that our country is in very, very dire straits right now.
So when you have a choice between Trump and Cruz, this is what I'm saying, because here's a big difference in personality and temperament. Cruz, when Donald Trump comes at him and says he's crazy, he's lying Ted Cruz, he's a maniac, he responds much different than Donald Trump. Rather than getting butthurt about it, he'll put on Twitter a clip to the "he's a maniac," you know what I'm talking about? that like dance thing from, was it Footloose, or I don't know, one of those old 80s movies, but he no, it was Dirty Dancing. That's what it was. So he reacts differently. And that's actually the kind of stuff. Rather than getting upset at these people, I don't get upset when people threaten me or make fun of me
you poke fun back.
What I like to do,
yeah.
I get this stuff on my YouTube channel all the time. Trolls, trying to get a rise out of me or whatever. And usually what I do is I like to poke them with a stick. Just say something that's going to antagonize them, and then thank them for watching my video and coming back and commenting and helping me out, because by giving me a thumbs down,
subscribe.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell them please subscribe.
Yeah,
I do that stuff all the time, and it gets them so angry, and it doesn't hurt me at all, and I end up laughing about it. And this is the kind of move that Ted Cruz is pulling. So why? Dan, I'm again, no judgment, man. I love talking to you, and I really do have a whole hell of a lot of respect for you. But why, when you are faced with the choice between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, and the game ain't over, man. It's not over. The election, and we can talk about this in a minute, how the numbers work out and whatnot, and how I think things will actually end up turning here. But why would you support over Ted Cruz, who is a constitutional conservative that has a proven record, even before his time working for government, of standing up against the federalism, federal control, and dictatorial power of the imperial president? Why would you do that against somebody? You're choosing Donald Trump over Ted Cruz, who wants to audit the Fed, wants to abolish the IRS, pass a flat tax, wants to hamstring the EPA, protect state sovereignty. And we know would actually have, and especially at this important time, we know he would pick a constitutional conservative for the Supreme Court to fill Scalia's place. Why would you support Donald Trump over that candidate? Why not go all in for Ted?
Well, because being a president is more than your voting record. That's what I will say. It's much more than your voting record. Being a president is being a leader that can get the will of a people, the will of a nation behind you, like Ronald Reagan did. And like, good or bad, like Barack Obama did, okay? And overwhelmingly, okay? He was able to bring a nation behind him. And we were on the other side of that, but it happened. And so I cannot imagine in my wildest dreams a Ted Cruz bringing a nation behind him. I just can't. He comes off as it's a marketing thing, man. He comes off as a televangelist or a used car salesman, and a bad one at that when he speaks. And I think that what would be beautiful is a Ted Cruz who stays in the Senate, or what would be beautiful is a Ted Cruz who goes to the Supreme Court to carry those values forward. I could see either of those things happening. But to be president of the United States involves a word that we have not brought up in this conversation right now, and that's charisma. And honestly, I think while Ted Cruz resonates with a certain degree of people, even in the people, okay, that he is supposed to be evoking this sort of emotion inside of, he has failed. And there's no way around that. He's failed to bring that sort of reverie to the vote. Okay, he just has not been able to bring along the evangelical Christians to the vote. As a matter of fact, Trump has done very well in those demographics. And the reason why is he is just not a charismatic person. He's the smartest guy in the room, Mac, and he's got an arrogance about him that needs to be addressed before he will be a leader that goes any further than being a member of the Senate. And honestly, I think that's where that's going to end. But he just, there's one thing of having all the answers on the test, okay, having 100%, going to the best school, okay, and having all the right answers. And then it's another thing to be elected most popular. Those are two totally different things. And I think all your listeners can understand that. Any American can understand that. The President of the United States has to be a popular person, okay? And Donald Trump has been able to tap into that popularism, even with me. And he's been able to do it by successfully painting himself as the outsider. And I'm sorry, but Ted Cruz has been there long enough now so that there's no way he's going to be able to get the stink of an insider off of him. That's just not going to happen.
Okay, so regarding popularity, and it being, you're claiming the presidency is essentially a popularity contest, and I can, to some degree, I can agree with that. But let's analyze that aspect of it for 1 second here, because popularity may seem like Donald Trump is the most popular, although I would disagree. I have some contention in this. That you say that Ted Cruz is not charismatic. I've listened to a lot of Ted Cruz talking. I believe that he is charismatic and that he can actually, number one, he's a master debater. He wins debates. He's won championships in debating. The guy has a unique ability to convey his points of view. He's able to orate what I think is extremely well. Now, some people may have trouble with, I've heard people say he's robotic and things like that, but I think I disagree with that. But honestly, I mean, I can understand how somebody, different strokes for different folks. People can receive the way he talks differently than I do, and I understand and respect that. But I think he's charismatic. I think he has the ability to express his viewpoints. But regarding the popularity contest that you're talking about, Trump is divisive in that if you can see right now, all right, the left is going crazy over Donald Trump. And the way that they're reacting is to silence him, which is only encroaching further the Donald Trump supporters. These people are being attacked, and what do you do when you get attacked? You get in your foxhole and you fight. This is what they're doing. So there's a lot of fervor behind Donald Trump because his supporters are very, very loyal supporters. As he said, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, broad daylight, and he wouldn't lose a single vote. This is his words, not mine.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
I know, it's a great line. To me, it's a great line.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most scary lines that any presidential candidate has said.
Oh, he's joking, Mac. He's making a joke. Do you really think Donald Trump's going to pull a gun and shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue? Of course not. They put him in jail if he did. The first people to put him in jail would be the cops who say, hey, you know what? We love you, brother, and we wanted to vote for you. Okay, but they're going to jail. I don't care who you kill.
He may win the election from prison is what he's saying.
He's flipped. And you would never see that's the kind of joke, okay? That he won't win he would not win for president. He just would not. Okay, that just wouldn't happen. And the thing is you really let's hone in on that for a second. Let's just hone in on that for just a minute. That's the kind of joke that a blue collar worker takes and laughs at because there's a little bit of truth. He enjoys that kind of popularity. You know that it's not really true.
And it's divisive.
Joke, okay?
You yourself would admit, right, that it is divisive. There are
it's edgy, Mac. It's edgy. That's what it is.
Edgy
okay?
can be divisive.
Edgy. It's edgy.
But edgy can be divisive, right? I mean, there's some things that are edgy that may not offend you, and you may think it's funny, and there's blue-collar workers out there that may get a chuckle about it. But there are other people that when they hear this, and I think this is one of the things that you and we're seeing much differently on. For example, when people say things to me, I believe that what they say. I listen to what people say, and I believe their words. I believe that for face value at what they're saying. For example, when you hear Iran saying "death to America, death to Israel," do you think are you?
Oh, I believe those guys. I believe those guys. For
okay,
sure. Yeah.
All right. So this is the difference. Like,
and I believe Donald Trump when he says he's going to wreak hell on ISIS, and that's something to discuss.
So you believe him,
those words.
You believe him in some areas, though, but not in others. I'm taking him at his word. What he says, and I think in some areas he's lying, but I'm listening to the words he says, like I do with Iran, like I do with North Korea. I take their words at face value. Unlike the Obama administration, I don't say, "Oh, they're just joking," that's just a joke, or "Oh, they rationalize why they say what they say." I take it at face value. When people tell you that they're going to kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and it's okay because they won't lose a single vote, I'm listening to that. Now, I understand.
I roll my eyes.
Look, I understand
theater,
this is a joke.
Theater, Mac.
I understand he's not really talking about.
As well as,
go ahead.
And to your point, Mac, there's going to be two people. There's going to be Donald Trump the entertainer, okay, and Donald Trump the president, and those things are never going to be two totally distinct things. He's never going to make that transition completely, but he really does have to ratchet it back again. He can't make that kind of joke as president of the United States, but he's not president of the United States, okay?
But
he's an entertainer who is
running for the president.
He's getting close. He has to start to change that sort of vernacular. I'll agree with you. But to think that, to look at Donald Trump's past, and to think that anything, and the best judge of future behavior, okay, is past behavior, okay, is what you've done in the past, okay? Do you honestly believe that Donald Trump would pull a gun out and shoot somebody in the face on Fifth Avenue? Do you really believe that he would ever do it?
My issue is not the fact that I think that he's going to go out and actually do it. It's what he's saying about his voters. He's saying that he's got such ironclad voters that it doesn't matter what policies he has, what actions he takes. He believes that he won't lose a single vote no matter what he does.
Matt,
he thinks that little of
he's using an analogy and a metaphor. What are we going to do? Do you want to pull out all the great books of literature and begin to go through it? Should we take out Catcher in the Rye and begin underlying the metaphors inside of it and begin to take each one of them literally? Should we begin to underline and highlight every analogy that's included in To Kill a Mockingbird and to say, hey, that's exactly what the author meant when he won the Pulitzer Prize for these books?
I think you're going to a pretty huge leap here of going through all of modern literature. This guy is running for the president of the United States of America. He's talking about how he thinks that his voters are so ironclad that it does and locked onto him that it doesn't matter what he says or does. These people will never change their mind because they're that steadfast of Donald Trump supporters. And look, if that's the case, okay, it very well could be the case because I've had so many conversations with Donald Trump supporters that they're willing to compromise certain things that they think are completely abhorrent, like people who oppose eminent domain, but yet they're willing to overlook it because they support Donald Trump. I personally don't believe in hero worshiping. I will. If Ted Cruz, for example, Ted Cruz does something that is a deal breaker to me, and there's things I disagree with him on, like for example his idea that Apple should be forced to open up that phone, which I believe the federal government already has the ability to get into that phone anyway of the San Bernardino terrorist. I believe that they already can unlock that phone. But what Ted Cruz thinks is that we can force a company to create a product, and I'm positive that Ted Cruz would feel the opposite in the case, for example, of the cake makers who didn't want to make the cake for the gay couple. Is, I'm sure that Ted Cruz would be against forcing them to make a product that they don't already have, because forcing somebody to work is slavery. That's all it is. And I don't think that the government should be able to force people to work. I have a fundamental problem with it. The only thing that should force people to work is necessity. Their desire to eat, their desire to pay bills, those kind of things. Those are natural free market incentives that force people to do these things. I don't think the government should be the ones doing that. So I disagree with Ted Cruz on that, but it's not a deal breaker on me on that one, so to speak, because he's backing it up with constitutional reasons as to why, not because it feels good or we're going to make America great again or because we got a country. These are the issues that I have. I have issues with Ted Cruz, and I don't like the fact that his wife was on the Council of Foreign Relations and she used to work at Goldman Sachs. But I don't judge a man based upon his wife. I don't judge a man based upon actions from other people that he does not have control over. So,
what do you think Ted Cruz is going to do? And I mean, it's on the same topic. Well, what do you think Ted Cruz is going to... let's say he is elected president by some miracle of God, okay? And I don't know God's will, but God reaches down and makes Ted Cruz president of the United States. Ain't happening. But if it did, okay? If it did and he became president of the United States, what do you think he's going to do on the Federal Reserve? What do you think he's going to do? Where will you be? Let's even given. I'm going to make a prediction for you afterwards, okay? But given 2 terms, give him 8 years, okay? What is he going to do with the Federal Reserve?
I think he's going to do exactly what he said he's going to do. He's going to audit the Fed. This is what...
I doubt it.
You don't think so?
I doubt it.
Well,
I don't think so.
This is the difference. So you don't believe things that come from Ted Cruz, whereas I do, and I'm using the same indicators that you have said. And this is the thing I'm talking about. Again, no offense, but this is the thing. This is the trend I'm using.
You have to look at what their advocacy is. You have to look at what his vested interest in, and he's been there long enough, okay, that he's in bed with these people.
Look,
I'm sorry.
I cannot disagree more with this. The GOP establishment. And let's explain. Let me make sure you agree with this contention of what an establishment is. It's the power brokers, the people that are there. They're not there for an ideological purpose. What they're doing there is to control and try to keep the power that they have. They've gained the system, and they're just go along to get along. They use the power of the incumbency to get elected. They don't want to actually fight for principles that they're elected for, because they don't want to get some people on the opposite end of the aisle riled up and lose their power. So what they want to do is just basically coast underneath the radar and manipulate this power without actually having to do anything. Would you agree that that's what the GOP establishment is? A fair summation of what
they have to do something. They have to do something. They have to keep the money flowing to their friends instead of the other friends.
Exactly.
Right?
It's mostly about the power, though.
Oh, of course, and it's it's corporate cronyism and that sort of thing that's going on.
Okay.
I mean,
so
for the GOP, that's what it's all about for that.
So we agree on that.
Power.
So we agree on that. And as far as Ted Cruz, I don't understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong here. If you can pull some example out, I would be much obliged on this, Dan. I would really appreciate it. But I am confused and concerned why people think that Ted Cruz is part of the establishment, because, as you said, past behavior is the best indicator of future performance. This is the best way that we can tell. Ted Cruz.
I think he just skipped a Fed vote. I'd have to go back and look at it. But I think I read something about him skipping a Fed vote.
That was
recently.
That was during this election season. He knew how many people were actually going to be there to vote.
Oh,
I'm listening to.
It's okay.
No.
It's okay. I'm sorry, but that's not okay with me. We signed you up to do a job, Ted, or people in Texas did. Go do it. Go vote.
Okay. All right. So
get on the record.
He knew.
Get on the record, Ted. Get on the record.
He has been on the Dan. This guy has been on the record so many times. The reason why he didn't show up to this vote was because he already knew who was voting for what. The votes were already, the sides were already picked. The die was cast. He was going to miss out on a campaign event to go vote and do what do you call it? A vote of protest, essentially, just putting his name down on this thing, which he's done time and time again. So in this one, he knew it was not going to pass. He knew that because the votes were already in, he already knew who was voting for what. He knew that it was just going to be a symbolic act, and he would rather use his time rather than voting to audit the Fed to actually try to win this election.
We've seen how well that's worked out for him.
And we disagree. We disagree on what's coming around the corner here on this. I want to get to that in a moment. But as far as his past behavior, what you're talking about, why he would be part of the establishment, it blows me away, because, number one, before he was even in the Senate, fought against his own party, George W. Bush, for states' rights, the state of Texas' right to the death penalty for an illegal immigrant who came here, was involved in a gang initiation. They raped and murdered 2 little girls, and the state of Texas wanted to put them to death. The Bush administration, his former boss, by the way, because he worked with him he worked for Bush as an aide during his campaign and during the Bush-Gore election in Florida and stuff like that. But he went against his own boss at this time, his own party, and won. He fought the UN and the international courts, and he won. And now Texas has put to death that man, that rapist. Now, I disagree with the death penalty, but I believe in the state's rights to actually have whatever law that they want concerning this, because it's not in the Constitution. So unless you're talking about the 8th Amendment, and the Supreme Court has already ruled that doesn't apply to the death penalty. So, but regardless, he won there. Then he goes into Congress. He's continued to fight against his own party. He shut down the government for Obamacare, trying to fight Obamacare. And again, I don't even necessarily think that he shut it down. I think that he put the Democrats in a position, Harry Reid in a position, to choose if they wanted to fund the government piecemeal or shut the whole thing down, and they chose to shut the whole thing down to try to punish the American people and show them, look what the Republicans are doing. But it wasn't the Republicans. This was Ted Cruz. His own party was against him, and very few people stood with him. Mike Lee was one of the very few that stood with him during this fight. This guy has proved time and time again that he's anti-establishment. And anti-big government. He wants to abolish the IRS and pass a flat tax. Dan, come on, man.
What are the odds of that in our lifetimes? What are the odds of that happening?
Look,
what are the odds
you're not going to believe this guy. The thing, if you don't believe him, okay.
What are the odds of that happening?
But based upon past record, he has shown he's doing what he says, or trying to do what he says, and winning. He went up against corn subsidies in Iowa and won. This is what I'm saying. You may think that, what are the odds? He's not going to do what this would be amazing. I would love to do this. But what are the odds that it'll actually work? He's telling you what he wants to do. He's going to try to do it because based upon past performance, we've already seen he does what he says.
I haven't been. Well, okay. So you're picking. I mean, you're like you are looking at a beach and you're picking out 3 grains of sand. I'm looking at 8 years of an Obama administration that has just run amok. They've done everything they wanted, and Ted Cruz has been there the whole way. And
how is Donald Trump going to be doing?
But
Ted Cruz has fought it the whole way. He may have been in there the whole time, but he's fought it the whole time. He's had filibusters. He's done everything he could do without a party establishment behind him. But what is Donald Trump going to do? He's going to continue utilizing these same mechanisms that Obama had, because he doesn't have a problem with the government being too big. He doesn't have a problem with the power structure. He doesn't have a problem with the fact that there's too much power centralized in too few hands. His issue is that it's not being managed properly. His issue is that we're just not taxed enough.
Well, there are multiple issues that are going on. I take the tax thing out of it for a second, okay? But what is Donald Trump going to do, and what would Ted Cruz do? I think what Donald Trump is going to do is, first thing he's going to do is admit to himself that I really have no clue as to what I'm doing. And that's what most leaders who end up in leadership positions do. It's like, holy crap, I am now the head of this thing now. What the fuck am I going to do? And Ronald Reagan actually was in that same sort of position. Okay, Reagan really didn't know how to run the federal government. He really had no idea. What Reagan did was hire people. He did what most good leaders do, which is hire people that are smarter than him. And already you have seen Donald Trump reaching out to that kind of person. And I think actually, had Ted Cruz played his cards right, and done things a little earlier and a little differently, he could have been part of that solution. He still may be in the Senate, or who knows, maybe down the line if Trump picks him for the Supreme Court judge or something like that, okay? So he still may be part of the solution. Well, what you're going to see Donald Trump do very quickly is you're going to see him pick a Chris Christie who has extensive legal experience. And you can call him a huge lib, but you can also see his power as a judge, his power as a governor, going to pardon people that have been found guilty of gun crimes inside of New Jersey. And New Jersey has some of these, draconian gun laws, okay? And he has fought to keep people out of jail who have unknowingly violated those laws, or even in some cases knowingly violated those laws, okay? What Chris Christie is going to do is see that the law is uniformly applied, which you and I have talked about so much on your program, okay, in terms of prosecutorial discretion and that sort of stuff. You're going to see him as a district attorney for the United States of America. You're going to see him in that position, or as a chief of staff, okay, in that sort of position. So that's the first thing you're going to see out of Donald Trump, is hiring a cabinet that knows what the I guess we're on podcast, so we can say those things without FCC violations. But,
I try to keep it PG-13, so if you please respect my listeners' sensitive ears.
He's
he's going to do that. That's the first thing he's going to do. The second thing is he truly, when you talk about Donald Trump, okay, you are getting what he eats, sleeps, and breathes. And I know nothing about it. All I do is buy and sell stocks. That's all I do, okay? All he does is make deals. That's all this guy does is make deals. The art of the deal is Donald Trump. Your past behavior is going to be a predictor of future behavior. And the first thing he will be doing is trying to get Democrats and Republicans, as appalling as it sounds to us, okay, is to get Democrats and Republicans to, maybe even a scary thing to think about, okay? Republicans and Democrats actually work on policy together. But Ronald Reagan was able to do it. And you know, you could say what you want about Tip O'Neill, okay, and what a horrible person he was, and he was a pretty horrible person. But crap got done. Can I say crap? Crap got done, okay? And they were able to do some amazing things, okay? They were able to do some amazing things in terms of rolling back welfare and, you know, and requiring people to work to get welfare and just solving a lot of those problems with reducing what our corporate welfare is. So you're going to see that. You were going to see him trying to get Republicans and Democrats together. And I can tell you one thing, Matt Worley. I don't know how he will do it, but this guy will balance the budget. There's no way that he lets those sheets run with debts and deficits like we have right now. It's not going to happen. Okay, so when you say, okay, he'll never be able to increase taxes enough to solve a $17 trillion going on $21 trillion debt. Okay, he will be trying to solve the deficit, and he will be cutting the deficit in those early years. And you're going to see us running surpluses by the time it's all over with. And I actually think you're going to see 8 years of Trump. I have bad news for people who hate him. I think that you're going to see him become a widely popular president because he's going to do some very simple things such as enforcing existing immigration laws, balancing the budget, cutting corporate taxes, and increasing the penalties on nations who actually manipulate currencies after the deal is done to make it. And that happens all the time. You could talk to anybody in business. That's exactly what the Chinese are doing. They're manipulating their currencies so that they can sell their construction equipment over here at cheaper prices. The South Koreans are doing the same thing.
And how is that bad, Dan? For America, how is it bad for us to have cheap imports?
No, it's not. It's not a bad thing. But you could have those same price products built over here relative to pricing after you've adjusted.
We're not building them though. We are not building those.
Those companies will begin to move. Those companies will begin to move. You watch what happens.
They already are moving though. This is the thing. Ford is moving. All of these companies are fleeing, and it's not because that there's cheap products coming in. It's because there's so much regulation. The government is so large that it's stamping its boot on our throat relentlessly, and we can't breathe. These companies. What?
I don't think Donald Trump is a huge fan of government regulation for industry.
Look, he's not talking about cutting the EPA. He's not talking. He supports a progressive income tax.
How are you going to bring any of the liberal Democrats over to your side if you go out swinging?
Are we trying to win over liberal Democrats, Dan? Because I'm not. I don't care what liberal Democrats are. In fact, they're on the opposite end of what I'm trying to do. They're trying to stifle liberty. I'm trying to even give them liberty, but I'm not trying to win them over. If they, what was that?
For a vote, Matt. For a vote, okay? How are you going to get these people to vote for you?
Look, you can't. This is Donald Trump's MO. He says we're going to expand the tent. We're going to bring in Democrats, but you're in the process of excluding 65% of your own party. The conservative base. There are 65% of the Republican Party at a minimum that are saying that they're not going to vote for Donald Trump, even if half of those.
And where would that be? Where would that be? Where would that number be, Mac? Where would that number be if you hadn't had Ted Cruz spending in the tens of millions of dollars to run negative campaign ads against Donald Trump?
Hey man, don't even get into negative attacks. All right, people who all I'm saying, you're moving in, you're wading into some dangerous area here, Dan, because you're talking about negative attacks from Ted Cruz, who his negative attacks are, first of all, playing Donald Trump's own words. He's playing the words that Donald Trump says. How can that be negative? It's showing you who the candidate is. And then secondly, Ted Cruz isn't up there calling Donald Trump a liar, even though he's lied. He's a liar.
Ted Cruz, let's look and see who's Ted Cruz when no one's looking. Okay, that's what you have to say to yourself, Mac Worley. And I don't want to cause any aspersions. I'm sure he's a wonderful man. We all have our faults and problems. And I'm sure he's a wonderful Christian man. He obviously did very well at Harvard.
I think you're making a huge assumption about Ted Cruz just not being a trustful guy because I understand you've listened to Donald Trump and Donald Trump has cast a lot of aspersions in the direction of Ted Cruz.
Listen to Ben Carson.
And Ben Carson's hurt.
He got kneecapped by Ted Cruz.
Oh, tell me you do not believe that. Dan, tell me you. All right, CNN report. Hold on, I got the clips. I'm going to go back here in the time vault here, and we'll hash this out because CNN played the clip. Played a report. They actually had a report where they were talking about how it's very strange. Ben Carson's going home. That's not what you want to do if you're trying to win the election. And Ted Cruz, his supporters, not him himself, his campaign put out the report, reiterated the report from CNN, and then Ben Carson is saying he's playing dirty tricks on him. First of all, no, not one Ted Cruz voter has come out and said, "Oh, you know what? I was going to vote for Ben Carson, but now because I heard the report from the Cruz campaign, I switched my vote from Carson to Cruz." Not one person has come forward saying that happened. So the argument that dirty tricks happen, I would imagine that there would be one person that would at least come forward and say, "Yeah, you're right. That was a dirty trick that they did to me." But there's no victim in this case. This is an accusation, and we all know, based upon how much what Carson got, he wasn't a legitimate factor in Iowa. He had no chance of actually winning Iowa, and Ted Cruz beat Donald Trump. Donald Trump jumps to Carson's defense. Look, Ted Cruz his campaign only reported what CNN reported, and CNN won't take the blame for what they did, and they're continuing to blame Ted Cruz. I get why Carson's pissed off at Cruz. I get it, and I understand.
Well, if you do, then why? If you do, then tell me why.
Because he's hurt. He feels like, this was a dirty trick, and maybe to him he legitimately believes it.
Ben Carson seems like a pretty bad guy to me.
Well, look, I'm not going to question a man's morality or anything like that. I thought he was a pretty decent guy, but
there's three sides to every story. There's not even two sides to every story. There's three sides to every story. So what he said, what she said, and what the truth is in the middle. Okay, and if Ted Cruz was going to engage in such behavior, there would be a certain degree, if he has any kind of brain, and I assume that he does from everything that I've heard about him, a plausible deniability to what he's done. Okay, and it's in a single case. Okay, a similar thing happened, I believe, in Hawaii with the Rubio campaign. Okay, is that Rubio was dropping out. Okay, and that there's just a pattern of behavior there, and you're never going to write it down. You're never going to write it down, and I think Carson knows what happened.
If we're talking about plausible deniability, okay, and if the worst thing that you can possibly come up with Ted Cruz is that he used a report from CNN and he maybe had some plausible deniability behind it, if this is the way that you think that he manipulated and he did do a dirty trick during a political campaign, if this is the worst thing that this guy is accused of doing, first of all, I would disagree. I have a different opinion of Ted Cruz based upon past performance, I've been following this guy's career for years. I have seen who Ted Cruz is. I have been absorbing a lot of this, as well as Donald Trump. I listen to what Donald Trump says, and I have a pretty good inkling of to who the guy is. He's got mafia ties. He's a thug. Admittedly, he's a greedy businessman. He's used things, and you talk about morality and what, the worst thing, again, even a worst case scenario with Ted Cruz is his dirty tricks in Iowa. Well, what about Donald Trump's eminent use domain, use of eminent domain? He's tried to use eminent domain to steal an old lady's private property for limousine parking lots. He's trying to conflate this to the same thing as building schools, hospitals, and roads. This is not the same thing. He tried to use it for private gain, for his private company. And again, you mentioned earlier, he's going to make deals. Donald Trump's going to make deals. This is exactly what I don't want. I don't want people to make deals. This is what the establishment does, the power brokers. They make the deals. They're the ones that
You may not like that deals get made. You may not like that deals get made, Deals get made every day, and the problem is
the kind of deals that I want made are the kind of deals that like Ted Cruz makes. For example, he was willing. The guy who's not willing to make deals with anyone, that can't get anything done, was willing to backtrack on his position. He didn't compromise his principle of being against subsidies in Iowa. He said he's willing to, instead of just outright cutting them off first term in office, first moment he gets in there, he was going to phase it out over a 5-year period. Now, that's not compromising on your principle. You're still getting the same end result, principally what you want, but you're slowing it down and making a compromise and making a deal. Again, this is the guy who can't make deals, Ted Cruz, a guy that can't get stuff done, but he is making deals. He has actually fought for conservative principles and won on so many occasions. Donald Trump has actively supported and tried to get people to support progressive ideals. He's donated to progressive candidates, actually changed the outcome of elections due to his financing, and badmouth people like no other. You talk about negative campaigning. This guy is the worst. He's continued to go negative. His whole campaign has been negative, which is something you usually only see from people who are struggling in second place or last place, trying to change the dynamic of the race. He's done this from the beginning, been a negative candidate the whole entire time. And you talk about him balancing the budget, Dan. I don't think this is going to happen. I don't, unless we're being taxed even more. Donald Trump, this is the guy who bankrupted casinos. How do you bankrupt a casino? He's done this.
I mean, during recessions, these are some of the first things that people begin to cut out. And there's no accounting for consumer taste. And every real successful real estate developer is going to run into bankruptcies. I've never personally run into them in my life because I don't deal with real estate. I've never had a personal bankruptcy. But guys like Donald Trump, if the bankruptcy laws are in place, they're going to use them to their advantage. See, Matt, that's the thing. Is as a businessman, you're almost obligated. You have an advocacy issue to advocate for your shareholders. Okay, you've got to. Okay, it's what you do for a living. And there's nothing wrong. You said I was a greedy businessman. It's a greedy businessman. I really have to look at that.
He said this.
Is that a bad thing? Is that a bad thing? Is that a bad thing?
Look, Donald Trump is the stereotypical thing that the left sees. Like, for example, any of you out there seen that crappy show?
Bad. Matt, is greed bad?
Oh, hold on. You know, I don't think that greed is bad.
No, it's not.
I don't think that it's bad to do things out of your self-interest, admittedly. But Donald Trump is the cookie-cutter stereotype apparition that you would paint out if you were a leftist trying to demonize the right. This is a guy with mafia ties. Admittedly, he's a thug, a greedy businessman. His own words. He's used eminent domain. He's a liar and a strongman. If you look at how he's wanting to censor people, he's everybody thinks that this is a guy who's going to actually fight back. And even I've heard you say on Facebook, Dan, you may not always agree with the tactics, but it does feel good to have somebody who's willing to push back. Yeah, I've heard you say that, and it feels good about that. But I have an issue with the fact of us putting the stereotypical guy who the left paints us out in like these crappy shows like Scandal, where all these people do is care about money. They're like Scrooge McDuck, and they don't care about the poor people. They're corrupt. They're willing to accept and give bribes. This is what Donald Trump is. If we're talking about somebody, you were talking about the popularity contest. He loses in the general. In the polls, Hillary Clinton destroys Donald Trump. And the media hasn't even begun to bite into this apple here. The media hasn't even begun to sour the public's, and especially the left's. Donald Trump is not going to win. If we're just talking about Democrat voters, Dan, Donald Trump does not win among Democrat voters with Hillary Clinton. So you're talking about trying to expand the tent to bring in Democrats who aren't going to come into Donald Trump's tent especially after they see all the rhetoric that is going on, the violence at these things. The left, what they do is they rally to shut it down, silence it up, and it's the conflict is going to get even more tense. It's going to get even more anti-Trump, and it's going to be bad. A vote for Donald Trump in the primary is a vote for Hillary Clinton in the general, because Donald Trump loses. Donald Trump will lose against Hillary Clinton because he alienates 65% of his own party, and the left is insanely. We're talking about foaming at the mouth against Donald Trump. They're not going to vote for him. The answer to winning elections is to actually come up with a conservative candidate. Romney, McCain, progressive, lukewarm candidates, exactly what Donald Trump is. The only difference here is Donald Trump is a thug, and you think he's going to get things done. This is what people think. They're tired of being on the losing team, getting kicked in the face, having the establishment continue to not do what they say they're going to do. We elect them into the House of Representatives, and they don't fight. Then they say, oh, we have to have both houses, so we get them in the Senate as well, a majority. They still don't do nothing. Now they say they need the presidency, and they continue to oppose people like Ted Cruz, who are actually trying to do what they say that they were going to do when they were running for office. I get why people who support Donald Trump support it. You're tired. You're sick and tired of being controlled by the PC crowd, being the only race of people. If you're a white male Christian, you're the only segment of population that it can legally be discriminated against, legally be assaulted, and no one freaks out. You can have there's a pandemic going on right now of black people who are setting white people on fire, literally, in our country. And is this on the news? If it was Freddie Gray, if it was Eric Gardner, it'd be everywhere. If this happened to a black man, it would be everywhere. And I get why you're pissed, America. I understand. But Donald Trump is not the guy. If we're going to win this election, if we're going to stop Hillary, we got to stop voting for Donald Trump, because he's not only is he a progressive, but he will lose to Hillary. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for Hillary Clinton. Dan, what do you think?
Well, I think that a couple of things there is, Donald Trump has tapped into something. He has tapped into a minority, and the minority is the middle-aged and above white American male, who's being discriminated against. The only legal discrimination left, and we are being discriminated against in the United States of America. And he has tapped into that group. And I think that a lot of people in the GOP mainstream, and a lot of Cruz supporters, and I won't put those both in the same basket, but there's an underlying resentment that they didn't tap into that first, that no one else thought of it first. But I think that it's a genius move by Donald Trump in terms of gaining popularity in the United States of America. That's how he has gained popularity, is by turning them into the victims, and it's working beautifully for him. Now it's to Hillary Clinton, and he'll say this himself multiple times, but it's so true. He hasn't even begun to start. And once he starts, that is going to be ruthless. That's going to be ruthless, Matt. He will make Hillary Clinton look like the evil witch. And since you wanted to keep it PG, I will say witch. The evil, un-American, communist witch, which she absolutely is. I can tell you that we are going to have this conversation later. We can have this months later, where are we now? It's still in March, But come this summertime, we're going to be having similar conversations, and you're going to see how that is going to change. He is going to make her own Benghazi in a way that the GOP inside of, Kurt Gowdy and Trey Gowdy and the Republicans could never do. Donald Trump will do it in a way where she will own it, and she will not be able to deny it. He will put her face on it, and he'll do it in a way using social media where I don't know exactly how he's going to do it. If I did that, I wouldn't be where I am right now. I would be one of these people. But I can tell you right now, every policy failure she has made, hitting the reset button with Russia, screwing things up in Libya so that now screwing things up in Egypt so that we have that as being, first we had the Muslim Brotherhood, now that thing's going to be the head of the caliphate. The huge disaster that's going on right now inside of Europe in terms of a Muslim invasion, I call them Obama's Islamo rape mob taking over Europe, He will put Hillary Clinton's face on that, I tell you, and he will also bring along the disenfranchised from from Bernie Sanders' campaign, okay, who are feeling right now that because they're having an election stolen from them right now. Oh, by the way, right now, okay, they're having their election stolen from them by these superdelegates, and that's not the whole story here, okay, but that's a large part of the story inside the Democratic process right now. There are going to be a lot of disenfranchised people in there right now, together with those people and with the blue dog Democrats that people think went away but never really went away. You're going to have people running away from the Democrat Party in droves. What Republicans are missing, okay, is that they see there's a large group of Republicans that see themselves losing power here. We can definitely agree on that, okay, that having Donald Trump come in is scrambling an egg in a way that those people cannot predict, and they do not want that. They don't want Ted Cruz either, okay, because they actually might want him more, okay, because they can tell which way the egg is going to scramble, okay, but they don't know it with Donald Trump. So the majority of the GOP sees a loss of power and something that they can't control and are going to paint this in a negative way. I get that, okay, but what the people and what I see is that this is an opportunity for the GOP through putting in place policies, real conservative policies, which is what Donald Trump is going to end up doing, regardless of the words that are coming out of his mouth right now. And people are going to see how those conservative policies work. That is precisely what happened under Ronald Reagan. I can tell you that is exactly what happened. You had everybody. That guy enjoyed such wide popularity for so long, and the reason why, because he did things that people, at first they hated him because the economy went to crap. Okay, because he had to have tighter monetary policy to get inflation under control. That's what Reagan had to do.
But here's the difference, though. You're comparing Donald Trump to Ronald Reagan, and saying that regardless of what Donald Trump says, even if he's saying progressive policies, even if he's saying he supports or in the past has supported progressive policies, he's going to be a conservative. He's going to get conservative things done. Don't listen to what he says. Ignore the words that he's saying because it's just rhetoric and he's just trying to win the election. This is not what Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan, he was talking about raising bold colors. Explain to people why conservative policies will make their life better. Explain out your positions, put your information out there, raise a bold flag, a banner that people can flock to. And the difference here between Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan is Ronald Reagan rose his banner with ideas and an ideology, and Donald Trump is raising his banner with rhetoric and anger and rallying this kind of fervor, this madness around him for people that have been disenfranchised in the Republican Party. And I want to come back because we got to cut to a commercial break. Dan, would you mind sticking with us through the break?
I can stay with you as long as you'd like, Matt.
All right, man. I'm having a good time. I hope.
Me too.
You enjoying this, man? Because I am.
I am.
Okay, cool. So, but when we come back, I want to talk about what I think is going to happen in this primary leading up to the general, and even if Trump gets into the general, where I would disagree with you because you made some what I would call pretty rather bold assumptions, like Bernie Sanders voters will feel disenfranchised and vote for him, and that the blue dog Democrats are going to come vote for him. So I want to talk about this when I come back, and we'll go back and forth.
Who's winning the debate here? Tweet Mac Worley at what is it?
On the Move Show? At On the Move Show, please, guys. Yeah, let us know.
You can tweet me at Day Like This. Tell me what a jerk I am.
Yeah, this has been fun. And again, I don't really care. I'm not trying to win anything here, buddy. But if anybody was winning, I think America's winning right now, just for the fact that we have open discourse going on right now, and no one is angry. I love it. Anyway.
Yeah, let us know what you think, and we'll come back after the break, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, we'll be right back after this, gang. Don't go anywhere. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about Donald Trump and what I think is going to happen as far as in the primary, in the general concerning Ted Cruz. In the primary concerning Ted Cruz, and then in the general, if Donald Trump actually does get elected, or if Ted Cruz did. I want to hear from Dan. I want to explain this out. If you guys want to join the conversation, give us a call. The number of the show is 360-450-5625. 360-450-5625. You can get us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow or on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. We'll be right back, gang. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore. with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Alrighty, we're back from break. First of all, thanks for sticking with us, gang. I certainly appreciate it. So, we got Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. That's daylightdisinfectant.com. And please check him out on youtube.com/Daylight Disinfectant. He does a lot of really good things on YouTube. Lots of
click on the video of the guy screaming into the camera. You'll see that it's like right up at the top of the page. It's got like 40,000 views on it right now. My viewers have nicknamed him PC College Bro because he's trying to get me to stop filming because he doesn't want me filming the woman who just almost hit me with her white truck as she's loading up her food establishment in the park blocks of Portland, Oregon, where I live. And this student comes up to me and calls me every obscenity in the book for standing there and filming. And I stand on my First Amendment right, and the cops come and stand on my first, and then I stand on my fifth, and it's got about 43,000 views or something like that. But they call him PC College Bro. You'll see his picture in a red plaid shirt of him at daylightdisinfectant.com. Okay, I didn't want to take you off.
I want you guys listening out there. And again, even if I know my audience out here is, they're probably, I'm guessing, based on how many people I see talk to me and the conversations we have in our Facebook group, which, by the way, if you're not a part of the group, I really wish you would join it. It's facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow. This is my favorite way to communicate to you guys. This is the preferred method that I have, because we link articles and we talk about it. I like to get your guys' opinions on this, and you guys don't always agree with me. You guys challenge me on these things. This is what I love. But I know the audience that I'm dealing with, and for the most part, not very supportive of Donald Trump. So even if you disagree with Dan on this one issue, Dan is an ally here, gang. Dan is a friend in the liberty movement. He has been doing a lot of great things in citizen journalism, and even if you disagree with him on this one issue, you can still go check him out on other stuff, all right? I guarantee.
And I started with Rand Paul, so they have to understand that I started with Rand Paul. But very quickly after Donald Trump joined the race, I kind of figured out that Rand Paul wasn't going to do it for me this cycle around, and I did switch over. So, yeah. So and people will say, how do you make that? How can you find two more opposite people?
So,
right?
So what's
Rand
your answer?
Paul and, my answer is that when Rand Paul began to show his face at the debates, just didn't grab me. There's a large amount of the persona, the gravitas, the charisma that goes along with being president of the United States. As much as I agree with Rand Paul and his policies, I think that you run into some problems overseas. You really do, in terms of And I have my own problems with those policies in terms of interventionism before there's an actual attack on another country. And I think that Rand Paul would hold back a little bit longer than I would on some of these terrorist groups and things like that. Once I knew we had a credible attack, and what is a credible attack, what is a credible threat in the United States, and when we would attack these people inside their own bases in other countries. I had some problems with Rand Paul there, but my real problem with Rand Paul is just his performance. I just you're not getting in Rand Paul with what you got in Ron Paul. Ron Paul had his problems too, but Ron Paul grabbed me in a way that Rand Paul never will grab me. I don't know why, but
this is the difference, though. This is the difference between Rand Paul, by the way, and Ted Cruz. And why I think it really hurt Rand Paul this election season. I think that the ultimate reason why he didn't get the kind of backing that Ted Cruz has got is because he has played the establishment game. Rand Paul has made deals. He didn't want to be like his father and be too oppositional, so he decided he was going to play the establishment games, and he received endorsements from Mitch McConnell in response to in response to actually getting an endorsement from Mitch McConnell. So basically, he's cozied up to the establishment, and I think it really hurt him in this. Yeah, he has a good message, and yeah, I happen to agree with him on a lot of different policy positions. But the fact that he cozied up to the establishment and made an endorsement for Mitch McConnell, by endorsing Mitch McConnell, you're endorsing the policies that he represents, and I don't think that they see eye to eye on things, which is why they had conflicts. But at the same time, you should not try to help the establishment get reelected. We're tired of playing this game. I think that really hurt Rand Paul. But Ted Cruz, he doesn't have that kind of stuff. One thing I actually want to get to, Dan, here, before we went to break, you mentioned Donald Trump. He's the kind of guy who's going to make the deals. Again, that's something I think is a bad thing. But he also is bringing on people who, because he may be uneducated in some areas, he's bringing on people that are more knowledgeable than he is on certain areas. Well, the Ted Cruz bashers, some of the people in the Donald Trump movement who've been bashing Cruz because of his wife's involvement in the Council on Foreign Relations. Again, I've explained this before. People have a right to disagree with their spouses, and how often have you disagreed with your spouse on something? It's very often. I don't hold people accountable for what their spouses do, but what I do hold people accountable for is the kind of advisors that they have, who they're listening to. Like, for example, Dan, I'm sure you agree that the amount of radicals in the Obama administration is something to be concerned about. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I mean it's just terrible.
Okay,
I mean, you have to be. I agree with you. Yeah, for sure.
So Donald Trump, he's just recently. This is in the last debate. He was talking about how Megyn Kelly asked him, who he's listening to as top national security advisors, and one of the first names that Donald Trump mentioned was Richard Haass. And I think that if we're going to attack each other, things should the playing field should be level. It should be fair. And if somebody's going to attack Ted Cruz because his wife is connected to the Council on Foreign Relations, let's just point out that Richard Haass is on the Council of Foreign Relations, and Donald Trump is actively seeking advice from this individual. This is the first person he mentioned about who he was getting advice from. So if all things are equal, if you're going to attack Donald Trump or Ted Cruz, you should also be a little suspect of Donald Trump at the same time. And I find it kind of funny how people can attack all these other establishment candidates or other candidates that are running, saying that they're elitists, that they're part of the elitists and things like that, but not consider Donald Trump to be part of the elite. He's a billionaire, and let's actually look at what you were saying earlier, Dan. Your prediction is that if Donald Trump wins the nomination, which that is up for debate. I'll debate you on that in a second. But if he does win the election in the general, you suspect that he'll beat Hillary. Just to be clear, that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it won't even be close.
Okay.
Won't even be close.
Well, so I disagree with this. As I said, I think that a vote for Donald Trump in the primary is a vote for Hillary Clinton in the general. I think he's such a weak candidate because, again, he's ostracized 65% of his own party. The hashtag Never Trump movement is exploding, and there are people like me, and I'm not just saying this. And I think that there's a percentage of people. Let's even just say half of the people that are hashtag Never Trump, maybe in the general, when forced to vote between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, I think maybe half of that movement at most would probably go over and vote for Trump anyway. Maybe they would lose some of that resolve that they have because they're so fearful of Hillary Clinton. I, on the other hand, I'm not. And I think people like me who see Donald Trump for what he is, and again, I think your decision between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton is between a progressive and a progressive who could be even more dangerous than Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. I don't know what he will actually do. He's a wild card, as you've said. I've listened to his words. I don't know if I believe everything he says, but the things he does say scare the hell out of me. And I don't want that. And then I see the movement surrounding him. I think there's a lot of danger with that. So I'm not ever going to vote for a progressive ever again. I voted for Mitt Romney. I voted for McCain. Never again will I do that. There are so many people in the GOP right now that feel that way. And we're either going to abstain from voting altogether, like we did with Romney, because no one was excited about him, and we keep losing elections like this. Or we're going to vote for a Libertarian candidate or a third-party candidate or something like that, write in somebody's name. But this is an election that I'm not putting my name down next to somebody that I don't at least support on a lot of the majority of the policy issues, or at least my deal-breaker policies. And those consist of the Constitution, not infringing upon people's rights. So I think it's a big assumption to think that Donald Trump will somehow win over the people in the GOP. I think at most he can maybe get 60% of his own party. Right now, 65% of his own party won't vote for him, allegedly. I think at most maybe 60% of the party, if he wins the primary, would vote for him. That's lackluster. That is not going to that's not going to get it done, and he thinks he's going to get it done. And as you've said, you think he's going to get it done by appealing to the Democrats out there. I don't.
Well, that'll be part of the story. That will be part of the story.
I just don't. I don't agree with that, though. Explain to me why you think he's going to win over Bernie Sanders supporters. I mean, I know you touched on it before.
Bernie Sanders, there's going to be a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters who feel burned. Okay, but what's the commonality there? Well, I mean, you have to look at you have to put yourself in the minds of the people who are feeling the burn, if you can possibly do that. And I know it's an intellectual exercise that most people won't go through because you border on insanity when you begin to try and think like these people. But they do have a certain way of thinking. And in their minds, they are also anti-establishment folks. And in that kind of fifth-grade simplistic thinking, their form of anti-establishment will meld into a Donald Trump type anti-establishment. And I don't mean to give them any credibility more than that. But and that's another thing is, Mac, you're an intelligent guy, okay? But you used to teach us. A lot of your listeners don't know my background, but I worked in a. How do I say it without saying the name of it? It won't mean anything to anybody anyway, but I worked in a think tank, okay? And even inside of a think tank where 2/3 of the people had master's degrees, you really have to talk to people, to brief people, to stand in front of people and treat them like they're fifth graders. You really do. Because people just can't absorb the material fast enough. They don't all have common backgrounds like you do, so you have to dumb it down, okay? And Donald Trump's message is dumbed down, okay, to the effect, okay, where people from the Bernie Sanders campaign will come over from that.
Well, this is something we agree on for sure. The message Donald Trump is saying is dumbed down. I agree because
he is. Yeah, he's dumbed it down.
He's
talking to a bunch of fifth graders, angry fifth graders.
He's not even saying what he's going to do. Unlike Ted Cruz,
I think he partially is saying
he's going to make America great again. It's like
beyond that, Matt. Beyond that, Matt.
It's like hope and change.
No, it's beyond that. What he's going to, I'll tell you a couple of things he's going to do. He's going to start putting money into a wall down with Mexico. Watch. You say he's going to build a wall. Okay, he's going to build a wall. He's going to take the existing wall. He's going to extend it. He's going to strengthen those borders through every electronic means that we possibly have. And he is going to sign executive orders which force people inside of Homeland Security to enforce the existing immigration law. I can tell you that is going to happen. That will happen when he becomes president of the United States.
And do you think Bernie Sanders supporters want that?
No, but they'll look at other things.
Like what?
For Donald Trump. They'll look at him as an outsider that's going to scramble an egg. Now, you haven't been given a fair deal in a broader sense, okay, that you haven't been given a fair deal. And there are a certain amount of Democrats a certain amount of Democrats that won't buy that line. They will buy into the fact that all we're going to do is enforce existing law, that we aren't going to round these people up in buses and ship them back to Mexico. He's not going to put that kind of story out front. The story that Donald Trump will tell leading up to the election is that he's going to enforce existing immigration law, and there are a certain number of union Democrat voters that are going to vote that way. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. But that's not where he's going to find it inside the GOP. I'll tell you where he's going to, hopefully he will. One of my biggest disappointments, Mac, with this election cycle, so if I could put my finger on one big disappointment, it's this Never Trump movement that's come through. Because what it says to me, okay, is, yes, I believe in fair play. Yes, I believe in, and you know what, I'm going to rally behind the party, even though I don't really support the guy. And that's been me in the last two elections, since I'm a Niner, okay? So since 2009, I've supported both McCain and Romney, who were nowhere near my top choices, okay, for these officers, okay? But I campaign for these guys. And I expected my friends, okay, and people who I know and respect to honestly look at that and say, hey, you know what? It's not my first choice for president. As a matter of fact, it's probably my last choice for president, okay? But I'm a believer in rallying behind the party. And that whole Never Trump thing is sort of my spoiled grapes for not getting things the way I wanted them, okay? And so that I'm not going to play in it. And so you might as well say, I'll just finish with Mac Worley, I will just finish with this, is the write-in candidate or staying home is a vote for the butcher of Benghazi. So when you do those things, you remember that you are empowering and putting in office someone who does have a record, who has a record of un-Americanism at its highest level, has shown incompetence to the highest degrees possible. Someone who has had as a husband a misogynist who has no regard for women's rights, who has no regard for respect for women in any way possible. You are going to take that person and you are going to stick them in the White House to do what? Okay, to punish a person who has no voting record whatsoever, who has never put a policy in place in his entire life, and has no opportunity to prove himself to you. Hillary Clinton has proven herself to you to be someone who is going to be a disaster for the next 4 years for America. So every one of you people who are hashtagging that out there, and I don't want to make you eat crow, I would just say, silently consider to not using it so often. I'll take the Ted Cruz approach, okay? Maybe instead of not using it in every one of my tweets, I'll use it in every other until I get rid of it and realize and come to the conclusion that it's a fantasy that Ted Cruz is going to win this election right now. It's not going to happen, Mac. And the problem is the longer that we wait, the more ammo that we spend on each other, okay? The more fratricide that is occurring inside of our party right now. And if in the end, if you end up not voting or putting in a third-party candidate, woe be it to you. Because in my opinion, I will say shame on you, okay? I know you're my friend, but I can shame you every once in a while. I will say shame on you. And the reason why I say shame on you, you are on the other side. That's what Andrew Breitbart would say to me. He said, you are on the, more than shame on you, you are on the other side, okay? On the other side from those degenerates and those disgusting people that I face down and Occupy, you are on that side.
This is a bit of rhetoric here. Let me actually dive into this because you've kind of come at me here and said that because I won't support Donald Trump, I am for progressive policies like Hillary Clinton.
You'll never support him, no matter what he does in his life. You'll never support him. He could 10 years down the road, never is what you're telling me. Never,
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So a decade from now, I think Donald Trump will still be of a reasonable electable age. Okay, so he could not have come to conclusions and changes in his life 10 years from now you would ever vote for him because you're using this hashtag Never Trump. Never is a very dangerous word. That's what there are certain nevers in life, but that's not. I honestly don't believe that's one of them.
So you're telling me that being more loyal to a party and instead it's better than actually being more loyal to an ideology. I want to make sure where you're coming from here, Dan, because me voting with my conscience and actually abstaining or voting for someone else because I cannot support a progressive I just want to clarify. You're saying that I'm actually part of the problem because I'm voting with my conscience and voting for ideologies that I support and are constitutional, they are conservative or libertarian, and that I won't vote for a candidate. I will never vote for a candidate, regardless of the party, because I'm not loyal to the GOP. I am completely disloyal to the GOP. FYI, I'm not a GOP shill. I don't give a crap what the GOP does.
Why aren't you tweeting Never Kasich? Why aren't you treating
I am Never Kasich. If you've heard me on the show, I'm Never Kasich. I'm never progressive. I will never, ever, ever vote for another progressive. I don't care what the GOP does in the future.
Did you vote for Mitt Romney? Vote for Mitt Romney?
I've already told you. I voted for the worst of the worst because at first I voted for John Kerry, then I voted for McCain, then I voted for Romney, and I realized voting strategically, like what you're saying, it doesn't work because we end up with a terrible candidate up there who loses, and we have another Democrat in office, and we end up in the same exact position, and we're getting screwed over. So what I'm saying, you're saying that I'm voting for Hillary by not voting for Donald Trump? No, I'm saying that you're voting for Donald Trump in the primary, putting him up as our candidate is in fact getting Hillary Clinton elected. You're the one making the choice to vote for Donald Trump, even though we have a conservative candidate who will get things done, do most of what you want Donald Trump to do, that you're not even certain if Donald Trump will do it. This guy has a proven track record. Ted Cruz has a proven track record.
He'll never get elected. I'm telling you, Ted Cruz
he would get elected if you would support him. And Donald Trump will never get elected. Your idea that Bernie Sanders supporters are going to vote for Donald Trump. Hold on, Dan. Just 1 second here. Your idea that Bernie Sanders supporters will ever vote for Donald Trump, I think that's a fantasy, and I'm going to show you why. This is what Bernie Sanders supports. Here's a clip.
2 or 3 words. What would define your campaign?
Standing up to the billionaire class.
Billionaires, 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 billionaires.
I am not a billionaire.
Millionaires, 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 millionaires,
millionaires and billionaires at the same time.
Millionaires and billionaires,
millionaires and billionaires,
millionaires and billionaires, millionaires and billionaires, millionaire and billionaire, millionaires and billionaires.
And this is what they're voting for. And as far as in the mind of a Bernie Sanders supporter, here's what they think.
This is Roger Simon for PJ TV, PJ Media, here at the Bernie bus, where we're covering the new Bernie event here at Grandview University in Des Moines with lots of folks who feel the burn. Feel the burn! Now I noticed on the Bernie literature for this event that it's opposing billionaires in American politics. How do you feel about that?
I think it's about time someone stood up to the billionaires, and I think that's time they start paying their fair share of taxes so we can get free public college and everything Bernie's standing for.
The government has helped the billionaires for time and time. I mean, over again for the past years. We bailed out the banks, we did all this, and now it's their time to help out the middle class, which they have destroyed.
We don't like billionaires. No, we're coming for them.
Definitely. I mean, it's his whole stance is how he wants to get money out of politics and prevent the billionaire class from having all the power and influence.
So this is the idea that these Bernie Sanders supporters. I find this to be a bit of a fantasy, Dan, to say that these people are going to feel ostracized from their own party because of the superdelegates and how it's a rigged system over there in that party, in the Democrat Party, and Bernie Sanders is going to lose. We all know that, but to think that Bernie Sanders supporters are going to move from Bernie Sanders to billionaire Donald Trump I think that is far-fetched.
A certain number of them are, and a certain number of them will not. Okay, but a certain number of them will because they will not have the option. And regardless of where they're drawing the monetary line, they are both going to agree that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump both equal establishment. This is maybe saying billionaire, okay? But what's really going on inside their feeble little minds is that they're voting against an establishment that they perceive to have done them wrong. And I believe that Donald Trump will put forward a rhetoric leading up to that election which will bring those people along. which will convince them that voting for Hillary is voting for the establishment.
These are the same people
that have already been in office that have failed. Hillary's already been there for these people. Where's she been?
Bernie Sanders supporters are the same anti-immigration enforcement people. These are the open borders crowd. These are the radicals. These are the people that have moved so far to the left that they're supporting a socialist. They've moved all the way over on the spectrum there to socialism. The Democrat Party in and of itself is moving to the left. I find it highly suspect that somebody who is anti-billionaire, open borders, is going to go to Donald Trump, his biggest campaign promise is to build a wall, and that how he's going to be. What was that?
There's already a wall there. There's already a wall there.
I agree with you. I'm not saying that there's not a wall. What I'm saying is that these people, these uninformed voters in the Democrat Party, are going to.
They're not going to. It's not going to turn. It's a straw man. Okay, because you're not going to have the option of voting for or against Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is going to be gone.
They're going to hear Hillary Clinton talking about how she's not going to deport. Hillary Clinton's already talking about how she's not going to deport children. She's not going to deport illegals who don't have a criminal record. She's overlooking the fact.
Not all of them. Not every Bernie Sanders voter gives a flying crap. Okay, as a matter of fact, I could walk through liberal college campuses here in Oregon, and I'll bet you I could find people that really have negative views against illegal aliens. I can honestly tell you that I've spent enough time around these people that they would perceive that as taking jobs away from them, actually, and that their real feeling is underneath. But they may support Bernie Sanders, okay, right now. But their feeling is negative in sort of an underlying sort of strange motivational sort of thing. They really don't care very much about that issue. But what they will care more about is that the system in general has failed them, and that Donald Trump presents something to them which is an alternative to the existing system. You were going to have an election of the most ingrained person who was a part of the political elite in the United States of America, in Hillary Clinton, against someone who has never put forward a piece of legislation.
I want you to understand, Dan, that the people that you're talking about,
it's a different election, Mac. It's a totally different election.
The people that you're talking about are the same people, the Bernie Sanders supporters, the MoveOn.org people, because Bernie Sanders is supported by MoveOn.org. I happen to be a subscriber to their email messages at MoveOn.org.
She helped fund and start that thing. Honestly, that has turned Hillary Clinton's got to be pretty teed off about that. She had to fight.
Well, hold on a second, Dan, because we're talking about the psyche of these people. Okay, the people who are supporting Bernie Sanders, there are a lot of them that are the most radical, the people that are on board with the socialism train here. That these are people who are MoveOn.org people that go to the events, they receive the letters. MoveOn.org is sponsoring the anti-Trump rallies. This is what the left is doing right now. Is they're actually, instead of actually protesting, instead of just saying, yeah, we're going to say our stuff, you say your stuff, and both sides are out there, they're shutting down freeways. They shut down a main thoroughfare in Arizona that stops people from getting, in order to stop people from getting to the Donald Trump event. They shut down. I know
there are a lot of Cruz supporters who I believe are applauding that. To be honest with you, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, well that's
I don't have any hard data on that.
Yeah, but that's your opinion. I do not condone silencing people's speech. This is a tactic that the left is doing. I completely disagree with silencing people and intimidating people in the riots. We're going to see riots. FYI, if Donald Trump continues, we're going to see riots.
What are you going to do? Go home? What are you going to do? Say no, I lose, I go home? That's not going to happen. Okay, so
what I'm explaining to you is that there's a powder keg right now. The Black Lives Matter movement is, and all of these open borders and the leftists, the socialists, they're all rallying against Donald Trump. They hate this man. This is the kind of the rhetoric that they're spewing. They're willing to put Americans at risk. Ambulances can't go A to B because they shut down a highway. They're willing to.
Do you think they would hate Ted Cruz any less?
Absolutely. Look, I know that the vitriol and the rhetoric on that side, no matter who's there, is going to be bad. But it's even worse. These people are so uninformed, but moreover, they're being stirred up by MoveOn.org, who is Bernie Sanders, against Donald Donald Trump. There's no
Don't you
way.
say move
There is
on
a
would
zero
get-
chance of probability of MoveOn.org suddenly saying, hey, you know what? I know Hillary Clinton's the Democrat, but we're going to tell you to vote for Donald Trump. It's not going to happen. MoveOn.org is going to rally behind Hillary if she's eventual nominee, as opposed to Donald Trump. That's what they're going to do. Those people are going to wind up Hillary Clinton supporters, and Donald Trump will lose the general because his own party won't vote for him. And Democrats, if you have a choice between choosing between a Democrat or a Democrat light, who are you going to vote for? The Democrat. If that's what you are, you're going to vote for the Democrat. Hillary's going to win by a landslide.
No, this is interesting because we both have opposite predictions on what's going to happen. But here's what I think. You have a lot of young people who are becoming one way or the other are becoming energized by this campaign. Okay, both from the Bernie Sanders side and from the Donald Trump side, they have just brought an amazing number of people to these primaries. Okay, I mean it's just that's something that everybody can agree on. That now you've got all these people who have never voted before. Okay, all of a sudden showing up. Another GOP nightmare. It's like, oh my God, we've woken up the sleeping giant. We have all these people out here who we can't control. We don't know who they are. And I think what you're going to find there is the people who are, you're pulling sound clips from, who are out there, okay, who are saying that, I'm anti-billionaire, okay, and that's why I'm voting for Bernie Sanders. That's going to turn into a different argument. It's going to turn into a person who's been a part of a political establishment versus a person who's not.
It's going to turn into, are you going to allow a fascist? This is what the left is portraying right now, a fascist to take over. And there's some elements of that argument that I can understand why they're making that argument, but the left is fearful that there's going to be a takeover on the right from a fascist who's going to suddenly change the whole game.
I mean, Donald Trump will turn that around. He'll show if you begin throwing the word fascist around, he'll show how Barack Obama was a fascist. And I don't think many of your listeners would disagree with me.
And to attack Donald Trump, for Donald Trump to attack Obama.
But that's how he's going to defend himself. He's going to turn it into a relativistic type thing. And it's going to be. You have never seen me.
I don't think that you quite understand the ability of the left to delude themselves. They can have the facts presented in front of them, and they can completely ignore it. We've shown them case after case of the Obama administration of how they're manipulating the system and how they're corrupt as all hell, and they've continued to ignore it. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump says or how he says it. You're not going to convince liberals to vote for Donald Trump, especially if he's attacking President Obama. He's going to be called a racist and a bigot, and it's all going to lead more into the fear and escalate the situation that will eventually lead to anti-Donald Trump riots. Dan, we got to cut to another commercial break. Would you mind sticking with us through the break again, bud?
No problem. I'll stay right with you, Mac. Well, right. Why don't you send us a tweet at Day Like This.
Yeah, we got a bunch of tweets we're going to read on the other side of this break, gang. So anyway, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're halfway through the third hour of the program here. We started late, so we're going over our normal time. Usually at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we get off the air, but we have an extra half hour over because we started a half hour later. So, first of all, if you'd like to join today's conversation, please give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. That's 360-450-5625. You can message us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow or get us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. So, by the way, my guest, Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant, that's daylightdisinfectant.com or youtube.com/Daylight Disinfectant. He's asked you all to message us, let us know what you thought, and see who's winning this debate. So we got some interactions from you on Twitter here. First of all, Ken on Twitter, he says that, that Trump and Christie are idiots. Tip O'Neill fought Reagan all the way. Who is this guy? And then Mark says, yes to the regulations. The U.S. has the highest corporate taxes in the free world. Don't think real Donald Trump ever addresses this. Then Mark continues to say that, sorry, Dan, but On the Move Show is killing you in the debate for your support for real Donald Trump. Let's see here. Kathy, she says, at On the Move Show, picking between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump is like picking the lesser of two evils. Ken says, he said, at On the Move Show, man, your friend has been drinking way too much Trump Kool-Aid. Hillary Sanders and Trump, all the same, except Sanders admits he's a socialist. Kathy says, at On the Move Show, politicians complain about illegal Mexicans crossing the border, but are all for people from Syria coming here. Strange. We got a bunch of other notifications here. Anyway, so first of all, thanks MacPack for joining the conversation. It's great to hear from you, and this is kind of the tone that I expected from you guys. So Dan, let's talk here. I want to actually dive into some other aspects that we haven't actually quite touched on yet. And first of all, I want to look at the primary, our expectations of the primary. From what I understand, you think that Trump is going to stomp the rest of this and just do you think we're going to make it to a brokered convention, or is he's just going to win outright in the delegate count?
It's likely that he will win outright in the delegate count. There's no way that that's going to happen for Ted Cruz. That's not happening. And if Donald Trump arrives at the convention with more than 45% of the available delegates, I cannot see a way that the GOP is going to, bring in some sort of arcane rules or allow people to vote one way when they came in, pledged another way, that will not produce complete and utter chaos inside of the GOP. They will hurt their own party for years and years to come. I think there's sort of a magic number of around 45%. I think the odds of that not happening are 3, slim, fat, none. It's not happening. So I think that's what you're going to see, and I think it's still highly likely that Trump shows up with what he needs. What is it, 1237? Is that the number 1237?
Yeah. Yes. So as far as I'm understanding, you think he's just going to sweep all these states, and it's going to be a big majority for him, Trump.
Yeah, Monday is going to win Utah and Arizona, right? Both those primaries are on next Tuesday. I think you're going to see both those states go for Trump. And Utah, he would take Cruz, and I can't believe it's going to happen, but I do believe it will happen, that he's going to take Utah. Okay,
so this is from the Salt Lake Tribune one day ago. New polls show Ted Cruz with big lead in Utah. I do not expect that Donald Trump is going to do that. Now, my analysis of what's going on, a lot of these races have been relatively, some of them Trump has had a big lead, but if you add in the supporters for Rubio, if you added Rubio's numbers to Trump, it would be a hell of a lot closer. And a lot of the people who are voting late in the campaign, probability speaking, if you look at the statistics here, most late voters, people who decide late, they're still undecided, they go for Cruz. In a head-to-head versus Cruz versus Trump in the polls, Cruz comes out on top by a pretty wide margin. So head-to-head, one of the things that's been problematic for Cruz here is that he's been having Rubio in this race and Carson and all these other people. The field was so wide, and all of these votes you're either a Trump voter or you're not. At this point, I think you've already decided you're for Trump, or you're undecided and you don't know what's going on. So what I think is happening is the vast majority of the people that would vote for Ted Cruz were scattered among the other candidates. Now we see the ability for people to unify behind Ted Cruz. So the numbers that you saw were, if you would have added Rubio's numbers to Ted Cruz's number, and it would have been a real campaign in different places, like Florida or other places like that. If we were all unified behind one, it would have been a real race in these areas. Now, when you look at Kasich, I don't think Kasich hurts Cruz as much as he hurts Trump, because if you're willing to vote for a progressive, which is what Kasich is, I would never vote for Kasich. He's a progressive. I'm not going to do. I'm not compromising. I'm not going to do what an establishment wants me to do anymore. I'm not just going to put the party above my principles anymore. I'm done with that. It's principle all day, every day now. And if you don't like it, sorry, we're going to lose. If you put up a progressive candidate, we're going to lose. That's what's going to happen, and that's not my fault. That's your fault for putting up a progressive candidate. So as far as Kasich is concerned, he's going to pull over, I think, votes away from, majority speaking here, more votes away from Donald Trump than he will for Ted Cruz.
Oh my God, that's an amazing argument to make.
That's what I think. Because if you're a Ted Cruz supporter, you're not a Kasich supporter. You can't be a Kasich supporter.
That would be like saying the people who were going to vote for General Patton are now going to vote for Mr. Rogers. That's basically what you're saying, Mac. And I just on a gut level,
I'm talking about undecided voters. If you're an undecided, let's look at the psyche of an undecided voter. You don't really know. You've seen all the stuff in the news recently. You still haven't really figured out who your guy is. You don't like Ted Cruz because he's really he's been painted to be a guy who doesn't make any deals. So you're still gathering information, and you don't like Donald Trump because there's a lot of rhetoric around him. You don't feel like you're part of that disenfranchised movement of people who are pissed off, that 30, 35, 40, maybe 40% of the GOP who really are pissed because they feel like they've been just slapped in the face time after time, and they're angry and fed up. You're not those people. That's why you're undecided. You're kind of outside of that aspect. So you don't like Ted Cruz. You don't like Donald Trump. Who are you going to vote for? Because you are kind of one of those lukewarm progressives in the Republican Party. You're a moderate. You just want to get things done, go along to get along. I think you're more likely to vote for Kasich out of that situation, out of that group of people, than you are for Donald Trump. If you were leaning to Donald Trump, but again, I could be wrong. I'm not. I'm just saying, based on what I think, I think you're going to see.
You are right, Mac. Utah is one of those last caucus states that's left. That's where Cruz does well. Is any place where you can play the caucus rules. He does well in a close primary. He doesn't fare so well. And that's what's going to happen in Utah. You're correct.
Yeah, so
that is going to happen.
I just think that we're going to see the voters that are voting for Kasich typically are going to be
now,
people.
Is Utah a winner-take-all, or is it not a winner-take-all?
I don't have enough information. I can look up that.
I don't think that is. I don't think it is a winner-take-all. So, but he's in third. He's actually in third place if you look at the real quick politics.
But the point is though is that there's going to be, we're going to see a surge here with now that Rubio's out of the race. We're going to see a surge on the end of Cruz, and it's going to start to be closer to this head-to-head numbers where Cruz in the polls dominates poll after poll. By the way, Cruz actually dominates against Hillary Clinton in the general election as well. Donald Trump is the only one that does not actually beat Hillary Clinton in the polls in the election. Poll after poll after poll, the majority, like 18-2, show Donald Trump loses to Hillary.
This is the thing. Any team on any given day, and you're looking at a game that hasn't even been invented yet. Never mind, they're not playing it yet. No one's playing it yet. And the one time Hillary has tried to play it, she tried to play, Trump is a misogynist, and she got her weenie whacked. Okay, can I say weenie whacked? Is that PG?
Yeah, that's
fine. She got her weenie whacked. Okay, when she did that, and she hasn't come back at him again. And I'm telling you that she's going to get more of that in spades. We still haven't been Benghazi yet. And you want to talk about freedom of the press? Holy crap! When he starts down the road with Hillary Clinton, who you're going to put in office, She's the person who put in jail a guy who did a YouTube video that had absolutely nothing to do with Benghazi.
And she wants she wants to repeal Citizens United. She wants to overturn that, which is basically in a campaign, in an election year, you can't speak negatively about Hillary Clinton. And you can't make a movie that intentionally negatively reflects Hillary Clinton. What's the difference between Donald Trump wanting to sue for libel laws? Again, if this is my choice, it's not me. It's not me at this point that's going to have Hillary Clinton get elected. I'm going to vote with my conscience, and if the GOP decides that they want to have a nomination, if somehow, some way, miraculously, Donald Trump it gets all the way through this, because I think it's going to be a hell of a lot closer race. I think there's a real potential here for Donald Trump to actually get behind in the delegate counts. Maybe Ted Cruz won't win outright, but I think it's going to be really close in the delegate count, or Ted Cruz may actually pass Donald Trump in the delegate count. And then there will be no such thing as a stolen, brokered election. How can you claim that the election was stolen from you, the nomination was stolen from you, if Ted Cruz went into there with the lead? In addition to the fact that
I'd be the first person, if he went in with a lead, I would be the first person to be supporting Ted Cruz.
Well, it's not over, man. The game is not over. It's still.
Well, okay, you say it's not over, Mac. But I think that if you really game those states out, it's not going to happen that way. And the plurality of the vote is going to be for Donald Trump.
I think, especially in blue states, where Donald Trump is supposed to clean up against Ted Cruz. These are the states that Donald Trump is supposed to do the best in. Kasich is going to steal so many votes away from Donald Trump in those blue states.
Stealing them away from Ted Cruz as well. Those people who are voting for Kasich are voting for
Who in the heck? What self-respecting person that would even consider voting for Ted Cruz would then go ahead and vote for John Kasich, who is ideologically, it's like the yin and yang. They're completely different.
Kasich is an establishment guy, and now Cruz is being painted, although he tries not to. He's an establishment guy now. He's been there for how long?
Look, give me examples, man. Your example of him being an establishment guy is the fact of receiving an endorsement from Romney, for example. He's getting endorsements now, and I agree with you. The reason why the establishment is on board is Donald Trump is an unknown quantity, that he very well could shake up the power structure to the point of where it risks their power. At least with Ted Cruz, they know that he's going to follow the Constitution. They understand that game. They get where he's coming from, but they have no idea where Donald Trump is coming from. They just want to. They don't like it. They're reluctant to do it. Lindsey Graham came out and said, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I think I'd rather have Ted Cruz. He's endorsed Ted Cruz.
He would too.
These are the kind of endorsements.
I don't think I was hard.
These are the kind of endorsements. You want to make a comparison to Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, the GOP establishment said he can never get elected. He's unelectable. He can't do this. He can't do that. And then they finally came around and realized the people were not on their side, and that the people wanted Reagan, and they were like, okay, well, yeah, he's great. Now everybody throughout history of that time has been like, oh, I'm a Ronald Reagan conservative, even though they don't even know what they're saying when they say that. They stand for the exact opposites. Anybody saying that they're a Ronald Reagan conservative when they're spouting out progressive policies like John Kasich.
Reagan ran huge deficits as well too. You have to look at. It is not a black or white. It is not the light switches. You think like I think, Mac Orley, which is what your problem is. Okay, you think on a light switch, and life doesn't work like light switches. Okay, progressivism and conservatism is a spectrum on a number of these issues, and a really great term paper would be for have kids write about the progressive policies of Ronald Reagan, because he was a big spender. I have to say. I mean, he put the Soviet Union out of business doing it, okay, which is a very conservative thing to do, because he took one of the biggest authoritarian, dictatorial, fascist governments and put them completely out of business.
You're talking about the Cold War, though. I mean,
how did he do it? That's correct.
Yeah.
How did he do it?
His biggest campaign, his finance expenses that you're talking about were on the military, and I agree. Yeah, that's not really a great idea, but he managed to defeat the Soviet Union without firing a shot. I believe in Sun Tzu Art of War. Yeah, I mean that was a genius. You're going to take something that was a genius move, a stroke that saved countless American lives, and turn them into a progressive for that. Come on, Dan. I'm just saying that's a little bit of a broad brush. You've come on this show, just FYI, you've come on the show, defended Donald Trump, and said that Ronald Reagan was progressive. I want to put the record out there.
I said it's a spectrum, Mac. I say it's a spectrum. Okay, it's a spectrum, and I could go back to a number of different policies. Okay, where you could make Reagan look not like a conservative. Okay, he could be an interventionalist, for example, definitely not a Ron Paul libertarian type conservative. Absolutely not. Okay, so. It's a spectrum, and you're going to have to look at where Donald Trump lies on that spectrum, or I would hope you would, and where Hillary Clinton lies on that spectrum, and the certainty with which you can put Donald Trump on that spectrum, and the certainty of which, because you know what you're going to get with Hillary Clinton.
I have a pretty good idea of what we're getting with Donald Trump too, man. You have to be able to take a certain amount off of the words that this guy says. You're saying that, he's not going to do that. What he's really going to do is this, this, and this. But he's saying that, this, and the other. He's saying other things other than what you're saying he's going to do. In addition to the fact of his past policy, you keep saying he has no voting record. There's nothing we can go off of. He's been very, very vocal about his policy positions. We may not have where he voted, but it doesn't matter because we have where he stands. We have exactly where he stands on policy issues throughout the years, and some of are completely.
Talk is cheap, Mac. Really, talk is cheap.
So you just ignore the fact that he's saying these things. You ignore the fact that
let's compare the two voting records. Let's compare.
It's like night and day. If we look at Donald Trump compared to Ted Cruz on record, where they stand on policies, it's night and day, and it cannot be argued that Donald Trump is a progressive. When you look at his policies, it is absolutely progressive to want an assault weapons ban. It's absolutely progressive to want an extended background check waiting period. It's absolutely progressive to want these things. It's absolutely progressive to use eminent domain. It's absolutely progressive to donate to progressive candidates. Have Harry Reid say you're pulling for him. It's absolutely progressive to want to have protectionist economic policies like tariffs. It's absolutely protective to say you're going to slam forward with tariffs, and a little bit hypocritical, honestly, when your companies are outside the country as well. It's a little bit hypocritical as well to say that these people are so terrible for leaving the country when you're hiring and got busted hiring illegal immigrants who came here. It's absolutely progressive to support all of these big government programs like a 14.25% wealth tax. It's absolutely progressive to say that you're going to remain neutral on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's kind of a big deal.
You honestly believe?
This is what he says.
Feels neutral on that. Donald Trump feels neutral on the Israeli.
That's what he says. I'm just taking the man at his word, my friend.
I've heard him say it.
And you can't deny.
It's a perfect example it's a perfect example on how he will be able to win over some liberal voters because he has said stuff like that. Because they will read it one way, and people like me will read it a totally different way, which is that I know how Donald Trump thinks. And he has no love for these terrorists whatsoever.
I'm just saying, it's madness to not accept people for the words they're saying.
It's madness. You know what's madness, Mac? Is sticking your finger in the other guy's eye. That's what it is. Okay, and really, that's what Ted Cruz is doing.
What do you think Donald Trump's whole campaign has been, man? He's been sticking his finger in everyone's eye. He called Carly Fiorina ugly. He's likened Ben Carson to a freaking pedophile. He's called Ted Cruz one of the guys that I think in this race has the most integrity out of everyone. He's called him Lying Ted Cruz, and he's the one lying. He's lied about the fact that his campaign is self-funded while he's received millions of dollars in donations. And he's a progressive. He wants universal health care. Donald Trump, his own words, listen to this.
Donald, true or false, you said the government should pay for everyone's health care?
That's false.
You've never said that.
Everybody's got to be covered.
Universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody.
But who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side.
Donald, true or false, you said the government should pay for everyone's health care?
That's false. The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side.
This is what I'm saying. It's not the fact that there's not a lot of documentation out there. This man is a steadfast progressive.
What did you have? I mean, what did you have before Obamacare? I think that's what you're going to see. Okay, I think if you look at what really is going to happen under Donald Trump is that slowly you are going to see Obamacare.
So you just discount the fact that he says the government's going to pay for everyone's health care. His own words is that
they did before. They did before Obamacare. You had Medicaid and Medicare before Obamacare. No one died in the streets, okay? And there was also HIPAA laws in all of the states that said you could not be rejected for policies based upon a previously existing condition. Trust me, Mac, I know. Okay, all of these states have put in place high-risk pools, okay, so that you couldn't be denied. It was before Obamacare, okay, that these things were put in place. But what you are going to see is what the system actually worked better before Obamacare than it did now.
So,
and I don't think
Dan,
any
on principle, do you support the taxpayers having to pay for everybody's health care, even those people who can't afford it or had some kind of pre-existing condition? Do you think, as a ideological policy, that it is moral and ethical to take money from one person and redistribute it and give it to someone else? Do you think that's ethical?
Look, Mac, there's taking care of people and then there's taking care of people, okay? Are you going to let people die in the street, okay, because they don't have money to pay?
It didn't happen before Obamacare. Trump is talking about a Trump care. He's not. By the way, he's not talking about just repealing Obamacare. He wants to repeal and replace. It's going to be more of the same.
What you are going to get in terms of that policy is going to be something that looks more like Medicaid used to look like, okay? Which is what everyone's policies are beginning to start to look like now. But I think
how is that not progressive?
I mean, we're already at a progressive point, and like I said,
do you think it's important to actually fight on the things that we actually ideologically believe? Like, for example, I oppose redistribution of wealth, and I'm going to vote for the candidate who I think will try to follow that ideological spectrum as well. I think Ted Cruz would do that. I know Donald Trump wasn't. He doesn't have any problem with the system of redistribution of wealth that we have. He said that Republicans have backed themselves into a corner on this position that he thinks is wrong. That the idea of redistribution of wealth is theft. He thinks that ideologically is wrong. That we should take from one group of people and give it to another, and that is a just society. I have a fundamental disagreement with that, and I think it's really, really, really progressive. And this is not the guy. And it's not my decision here. If the Republican Party speaks and a good enough percentage says that they want Donald Trump to get him elected, or if there's some kind of games that happen in this brokered convention that I think we're heading to. Again, I think the primary is going to be a lot closer and a lot more competitive than what you speculate it will be. But if Donald Trump gets a nomination, this is not me making this decision. This is the GOP. And the GOP, I'm not leaving the GOP. The GOP will leave me behind because they'll decide to go progressive, and I can't follow them there. I'd love to stay with the GOP and be able to vote for a Republican Party. I'm not a Republican, but I understand that they have the best chance. Out of the two-party system, they have the best chance of winning. Now, I want the kind of candidate in there that I can vote for, but it won't be me deciding to leave this aspect. I'm a registered Libertarian, so I will vote for a Republican if it's Ted Cruz. Other than that, I can't vote for Kasich. I couldn't even vote for Rubio because Rubio thinks that it's okay for the NSA just to bulk spy on every human electronic communication without a warrant in violation of the Constitution. I can't vote for that. I can't vote for Kasich. I couldn't vote for Carly for numerous reasons I won't get into right now. Ben Carson, I can't vote for certain things. Carson specifically was because of his desire to have a no-fly zone in Syria. I don't want to get involved in Syria. I don't want us to get into a World War III style scenario. Trump, I've listed off numerous reasons why I can't vote for him. The GOP will leave me.
Young Mac, really, let me offer you one piece of advice as a young man, and it's the old engineering axiom, okay, that we live by, okay. At the end of the day, after a lot of your listeners don't know, but I've got I'm a 4 years engineering school and a bachelor's degree, and then another master's degree in systems engineering, and then an MBA on top of that. After all that education, which has largely gone to waste since I'm a citizen journalist and retired now at 53 years of age, the things you remember are things like this. The 80% solution is good enough 95% of the time. And if you wait for perfect, you're not going to do a lot of voting back. That's all I'm going to say. You're going to end up staying home a lot because there are no perfect candidates out there.
You said 80%?
80% is good enough 90% of the time.
I don't agree with even close to 80% of Donald Trump's policies. I can't agree with 5% of Donald Trump's policies.
Who's closer, him or Hillary?
Honestly, neither of them. I'm not going to vote. I'm not making the decision out of lesser two evils. This progressive or that progressive. They're both progressives. I can't vote for a progressive. Give me a conservative or libertarian candidate, and I'll vote for them all day, twice on Sunday. But I can't vote for them any time at all at this point if it's a progressive. But Dan, we're running out of time, man. We got to run.
Mac, I've enjoyed this so much.
I have too, man. Honestly, this has been a blast. Give our listeners your info, all your social media stuff. So
please, everybody, go out and watch PC College Bro, the guy in the red plaid shirt, at daylightdisinfectant.com, and just go straight to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/daylightdisinfectant, or send me a tweet and tell me how much you hate Donald Trump. Please do it at daylightdis. They don't let me use the whole daylight disinfectant too long.
Well, Dan, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I've really enjoyed talking with you. I love the fact that we can talk about this stuff and not like scream each other down and get angry at each other. We can have a logical, rational conversation. And again, this is one of those times where we're just gonna have to agree to disagree because we couldn't find common ground. But I certainly have enjoyed talking with you, and it's been enlightening for me. So thanks. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, and thank you very much to your listeners. You have great listeners, and thank you very much for taking the time to listen to the program today.
All righty. All right, Dan. Well, thanks again. You take it easy, bud.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, gang. So we're going to wrap up the show. We've only got a minute 30 left. So I just want to first of all say thank you so much to Dan for joining us, and to the Mac Pack. Thanks for tuning in week after week. You guys tune in. You're the tip of the spear. You're the reason why we do this show, and I really appreciate your involvement on this show today, joining in on the conversation. It meant a lot to me. So thanks so much. Don't forget to check us out every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at OnTheMoveShow.com. Follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And follow us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.